Hello and welcome to Loyalty Day 2024. We're absolutely thrilled to see so many people here. We've got a great afternoon lined up for you. We've had nearly 1,000 people. It's just a few tens short of 1,000 people registered for this event. People from all of the continents, pretty much, maybe not Antarctica, but we have people from Belgium, the Netherlands, New Zealand, Australia, North America, all across Europe, so many people, and a big contingent here from the United Kingdom. I'm looking through the names of some of the attendees here, some good friends, some well-known faces, and some new people as well. So welcome to everybody. It's a big community here. We absolutely love getting together once a year to talk about the supporter experience, to share insights, to share what we've learned, to have those really interesting and insightful presentations into what other charities have been doing. And we've got so much on for you this afternoon. It's going to be a great session. Joining us today, we're very lucky to have representatives from 4 amazing charities. So we have Joe Dunsford and Heidi Quine from Animals Asia. Hi, Joe. Hi, Heidi. And Heidi is in Vietnam. Is that right at the moment? Heidi is in Vietnam. We'll give a bit more detailed introduction later on in the afternoon. We have Giannina from Dementia UK. Hi, Giannina. Jenna Allcock from Breast Cancer Now, and Emma Smith from British Red Cross. You'll be hearing from all of those amazing speakers later this afternoon. And if you've got any questions at all, please do pop them in the Q&A. You should have access to the Q&A. We'll maybe answer some of those live. Maybe we'll need to follow those up afterwards. Anyway, we're so glad that you're all here. It's brilliant to see you here. So before we start, I'm just going to quickly run through what the afternoon will entail. So we're going to open up with Roger. Roger's going to give us an introduction to, well, actually, how do we assess how good your supporter experience is? We'll then have a presentation from Animals Asia with Joe and Heidi. We'll then be having a talk from Giannina at Dementia UK, then Jenna at Breast Cancer Now, and finally from Emma at British Red Cross. Interspersed between those, we'll have some other insights from Tash, from Kay, from Roger and Anton, just about how we measure, some new insights, some new research, some new findings. So there'll be other things sprinkled throughout the afternoon. And we're going to wrap up with just one sort of final question. So any questions in the Q&A, please do say hi in the chat. But I think that's all for introductions. I'm going to hand over now to Roger, who's going to tell us how we find out how good our supporter experience is.
Hi everyone, it's really great to see you, and I've been watching the names coming through in the chat, and it's just amazing. It's brilliant to see. I'm going to share a little bit around. I'm going to pop up sort of a couple of times through the afternoon and just share a little bit around what we've learned at About Loyalty over the years about supporter experience, and particularly about how that can be applied, and how hopefully I'm going to sort of prompt a few thoughts for you about how you can take some of the insights away and use them in your charities. So to start off with, I just wanted to talk about what we mean by supporter experience, and particularly what it is that sits behind it in terms of the way people feel about you. If you've been coming to any of our loyalty days before or seen anything we do, we always start with a picture of a heart. If you're playing About Loyalty bingo anywhere, you'll have the word heart on your card, and you'll be ticking that off right now as pretty much the first guaranteed one, we'd say. There's no apologies for doing that. We're setting the scene today to be talking about supporter experience, talking about loyalty, and we want to set the scene by just a reminder that when we talk about supporter experience, what we're really talking about is the emotions that people feel. The purpose of creating a great supporter experience is, of course, to grow loyalty. Loyalty is emotional. Supporter experience is emotional. You'll grow that loyalty. You'll grow the way people feel about you when we get those emotions and feelings right. We use this definition here, and you'll see sort of key words in there. It's about a feeling. It's about a feeling of support, allegiance, connection. And it's about wanting. They're emotional words. They're not rational words. They're very emotional words, and that's absolutely the heart of any relationship between a supporter and the charity that they support. So that's all well and good, but what emotions matter? So I'm now going back. We've been running research like this for 10 years now, Initially, when we launched, we tested 12 concepts, and we've added more in since. We've tested a whole series of different emotions or drivers of connection that might sit behind why people support and why people continue supporting. I'm not going to run through them all here, but you can see the real range of what we've seen. And the sector's changed massively in the last 10 years. And it's changed with external events, it's changed with internal events, it's changed with the way the press treat us, COVID, GDPR, lots of things going on that means the sector has changed massively in that time. But one of the things that we've seen and been almost sort of surprised by, I guess, is how consistent the things that really matter to supporters has been, and they haven't changed. What was important 10 years ago in terms of the emotional connections that people have is just as important today. They're the same concepts that we need to look at. So our research has shown that of the things that we're looking at on here, there are 3 that consistently come out as being, across all supporters, the most important things that really matter to them. And if you're playing about loyalty bingo, you will hear us using these words all the way through the afternoon. The 3 that we're looking at on screen are here. The first of them is commitment. It's a passion for the cause. It's a passion for what you do. It's a real belief from the supporter that what you do is important. And it's important to me as a supporter that you are successful. And that's when I feel really commitment to you, when it really matters to me what you do. So what you do is really important. I've got to understand your goals and your ambition and your work. So that's about growing commitment. The second of the pillars we need to get right is satisfaction. And that's very sort of shorthand. That's about happiness in the way that you communicate with people. It's about making people feel good about being a supporter and enjoying the experience with you. And then the third pillar is trust, and trust around a belief that really that you have the impact and you do what you're saying you're going to do, and you do it in the right way. When we get that right, when the supporter experience delivers those things, creates that emotional connection, then we create the loyalty that we want to create with supporters. And that's ultimately what we're trying to do. So I'm going to pause here and I just want to sort of, if you like, throw this back to you and start thinking about, maybe that's prompted you to think about supporter experience in a different way. Often we think about supporter experience and supporter journeys, and we put our post-it notes on the wall, and one leads to another, and you think about that journey that people go on. And we think about the transactional journey that people have from one product to another, or from a first gift to a second gift, or an upgrade, and things like that. But actually, at the heart of the support experience and journey, before we get to any of that transactional stuff, we need to be building supporters' commitment, satisfaction, trust. So I guess that's my first question to throw out to you today, as you're thinking now, and as you're thinking throughout the afternoon. Really, we like to think about, okay, do my experiences deliver those really important things, the things that really matter to my supporters? And do I know whether they are? Do I know whether my support experience is any good? So that's the first part of what I'm just going to kick off today with, in terms of how good, what emotions matter and what connections matter. The second one I want to go into is a question around whether it really matters. How much does it matter creating a supporter experience and a support experience that works? And I'm just going to share again another piece of research. Some of you might have seen this before, but we were lucky enough to be able to work with 12 charities and with nearly 50,000 donors from those charities. And with each of those donors, we asked them through an online survey, we asked them about how they feel about the charity, and all the sort of areas that I've just showed you in terms of the areas we looked at were included in the survey. We did that at a moment in time. It was different for different charities, because not everyone at the same time, but at a moment in time for each of the charities, we were able to talk to their supporters and ask them about how they feel about the charity and their relationship with the charity. And then we tracked their actual giving, their behaviour, the amount of money people actually gave over the following 3 years, from that, or up to 3 years from the point for each charity. And at each stage, we were able to see how those emotions that we'd been tracking were able to lead into and create future support. And what we're able to see, and I want to sort of take you back here, because we've been talking about the concept of support experience for a long time. We've been talking about creating happy donors for a long time. But I'm not aware until this there was ever any real evidence that showed that by making supporters happier, by giving people a better experience, by growing their emotional connection, what we call loyalty, that actually it led to real proper happy success in the organisation. And what this research showed is that when we create happy supporters, that leads to happy income. That's a horrible phrase, isn't it? More money, but I wanted to link it with the word happy. And ultimately, that means that work we do, we can do more work. We have our beneficiaries are in a better place because of what we do, ultimately because we're able to treat our supporters better and give them a better experience. In fact, we were able to quantify it. What we saw, we have a scoring system. I'm not going to go into that now. We have a scoring system where every supporter can be given a score between 1 and 7 for how loyal they feel towards the charities that they support. And what we saw is that for every 1 point up that scale people moved, we saw 20% more income over the following 3 years. So that's 20% on top of what the charities would have been raising anyway. And on top of that, we also saw there was an increase of people wanting to leave a gift in their will by 9%. So we can really see that direct link between treating people well and then their future support. There's a link here. There's a QR code there that if you want to see the research that I'm referring to there in more detail, you can go in, you can download it. It's available free of charge, and you can go and download that. So we've shown commitment, satisfaction, trust. We've shown that it really matters. And so again, just to sort of hopefully get the cogs whirring a little bit for you, I'm just put this question out. Do you really know how good your supporter experience is? Do you know if you're getting that right? Do you know if you're missing out on income? It genuinely does lead to income. I just want to put that out there. Obviously, we're here to help if any of the answers to that question is no, we're here to help. So I'm going to leave it there. Hand back to you, Richard.
Thank you so much, Roger. I've always enjoyed hearing about our science, our research, and actually that the supporter experience, it really matters. Getting it right really matters. And then actually it's really easy to measure, really easy to kind of evaluate and diagnose. I understand, where as a charity we're doing well and where as a charity we're not doing so well. What I'm going to do now, I'm going to hand over to Jo and Heidi from Animals Asia. So that's Joanne Dunsford, who is Global Director of Fundraising and Communications, and Heidi Quine, who is the Vietnam Country Director, but joining us in her capacity as the Bear and Vet Team Director. She's based in Vietnam now, so I think it's probably getting on for 9 p.m. there at the moment, maybe even a little bit later. So big thank you to Heidi for joining us. But Heidi and Jo are going to talk to us about how they as Animals Asia, they have the highest. So we measure supporter experience with loyalty, they have the highest loyalty score of any charity that we've ever worked with. And we often have the conversations with Jo and Heidi about how do you do that? How have you gone about that? How have you created supporter experiences that just get smashed right out of the park? How do you manage to do that? And in this presentation, they're going to throw a little bit of light on that and share some of the things that they do differently that really do deliver amazing supporter experiences. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Jo and Heidi. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Richard, and good afternoon, good morning, good evening to everybody. What a wonderful group we've got here. And yeah, exactly, we're really thrilled to be here. And I think the first clue actually is the fact that Heidi and I are here together. And I think you'll hear quite a lot about the collaborative approach that we have here at Animals Asia and how this particular issue is really special. And actually, I happen to know, I don't know if she is here, our CEO and founder also signed up to attend this session. So that will just give you a bit of a glimpse as to how important our donors and donor loyalty is to all of us here at Animals Asia. And there's a bit of a clue. So exactly, thanks for the introduction, Richard. I look after the fundraising and communications team here at Animals Asia, and delighted to be joined by my wonderful colleague Heidi, who is our Vietnam country director. People saying hi to Jill, and hi from me too, Jill, if you're here. So today we'll be talking to you about the critical role donors play in helping us achieve our mission and why we believe the way we work with donors contributes to sector-leading donor loyalty. So first of all, let me give you a bit of an introduction to Animals Asia. We were established in 1998 by Jill Robinson, who is still our CEO today. Our founding mission is to end bare bile farming, although we also have programs in cat and dog welfare and working to improve the lives of animals in captivity, particularly stopping the use of animals in tourism. We work predominantly across China and Vietnam, although our reach and impact extends right across Asia. Our achievements, so our donors, and I love this, our donors refer to us as the charity that gets things done. What a wonderful accolade that is. And it's a nod to one of the crucial elements of trust that contributes to our donor loyalty. In under 25 years, we have played a pivotal role in making the sale of cat and dog meat illegal in China. We're pioneering an ethical elephant tourism model in Vietnam, which we hope will bring an end to elephant riding in the country. And we've rescued almost 700 bears. We're actually on 699 now, so we're almost at the 700 number. 700 bears, and we have 3 sanctuaries in China and Vietnam. And we also have an exclusive MOU with the Vietnamese government to rescue and bring home every remaining bile bear across the country, and in doing so, end bare bile farming forever in Vietnam. Our founding mission will be wonderful. We've always felt that there was something special about the relationship with our donors. And before 2021, I could give you anecdotes like the donors that invited me to their wedding, in which they referred to the moon bears in their vows. Absolutely could have blown me down with a feather. Or the fact that when you start working here, the donors immediately send you invitation to become their Facebook friends, which is a bit strange when you first get here, but after a while you realise that that's completely normal. And so there's definitely something different about Animals Asia, but it wasn't until we took part in the Chase Index that we knew for sure something remarkable was happening. Here are our scores from the survey. When you take into account that few charities in the index score over 6 on any of these metrics, you can see that we are scoring high in all areas, and we ran the survey across our markets around the world. And in fact, Animals Asia is the only charity to score over 6.1 on all metrics, with the exception of our Asian donors who do traditionally perform a bit differently. We're hitting over 6.1 in all of our markets. So we're keen to understand what makes Animals Asia so special. Just the next slide, please. Okay. Yeah, we just wonder, what is it then about us that's so special? And this is the immediate assumption, right? We have bears. And certainly when we ask our donors what makes us special, the fact that we rescue abused animals does feature highly in their response, as you can see on the next slide, with 66% of respondents saying this was the most important factor in what they love about us. But we know that other charities in the Chase Index also rescue abused animals, so that can't be the sole reason. So there must be something that we are doing which is specific to Animals Asia, which is nurturing this loyalty. Now, believe me, I wish, because Richard says we've talked about this, you know, we've dived into, I wish I had a definitive data set and answer here to say it's this, and we've looked into it and here are the numbers. And we are working on it, we continue to work on it. But I'm not entirely sure, actually, that's where we'll find the answer. And that's because I think the kernel of truth lies in our culture, not our strategy, which, as you can see, is being eaten for breakfast here. And over the years, I've heard people in the team say joining Animals Asia is a bit like a cult, and they mean that affectionately. We are led from the heart by our founder and CEO, Jill Robinson, with the galvanising, driving purpose of ending bare bile farming. And that is absolutely where it starts. We all share her vision and values, which creates a natural alignment in our approach. We all authentically behave in a similar way and quickly realise that the way we engage with one another, and that includes our donors, is not driven by targets or intentional actions. It's simply how we do things around here. Internally, we refer to our way of working as the Animals Asia way. And it's a bit strange because we all instinctively know what that means and that it's a bit different, but it's never been clarified or purposefully designed. So the question for Heidi and I is, how do you articulate something intangible and provide constructive takeaways for everyone here? And we've had a bit of a go at that for you today. So our AAF way. So our way is not a strategy. It's purposeful in that we trust and believe we're doing things the right way, but it's not intentional in a strategic, tactical sense. We're not trying to hit targets or goals. We're cultivating an experience. But firstly, we understand that the organisation is on a journey towards achieving our mission. And that journey is what we all join, staff and donors, together. They're not simply donating to us, they're part of the team. And so because we see them as part of the team and we talk to them in that way, which is open, honest, vulnerable, they're on the inside walking the walk, not the outside hearing the talk. And that makes us completely visible and accessible. Many of our donors of all segments have direct contact with Jill. If they email her, she personally emails them right back, as will I, as will our programs teams. Donors reach out and we reach right back. And the one central principle here is that we are all collectively one team. We all inherently understand that without our donors, there simply is no Animals Asia. And that makes our mission and successes every bit as much theirs as ours. We get things done together or not at all. And interestingly, when I was preparing this presentation, I realised that instinctively, I didn't separate programmes, staff and fundraisers. And instead, this is how we see the world. And this next clip will bring our collaborative approach to life. Okay.
We couldn't have done it without our amazing bear and vet team in China, without the help of the local authorities and without the help of the local community too. But most importantly, we could never have done this without you, our supporters, our donors, our family. Even through these ups and downs, through all the uncertainty, you have never wavered. Your constancy has kept us going, and now together we can finally give these bears the life they've always deserved, the life you've always wanted for them. Thank you for never ever giving up.
Thanks.
We couldn't have done it without our amazing...
Sorry. You'll notice in that clip that Jill isn't referring to gifts or donations. She's not thanking people for donating, for giving money. She's thanking our family for staying the course and keeping us going, being on the journey together. And she shares how happy we are that we can give the bears the lives the donors have always wanted for them. So our mission is their dream, and we are here to serve and support the donors. Now, I discussed this concept with Jill in preparation for today to make sure, I was like, because I'm pretty sure that's how we do it, right, Jill? This is our view. Do you agree with that? And she said, is there any other way to do it? And she just was completely baffled that any organisation would think any differently, that the organisation is there to serve the donors. And I think that was really, really wonderful. And in most organisations, donors are seen as a means to an end to achieve a mission. But at Animals Asia, staff are here to empower the supporters to realise the mission together. And we understand that the real supporter journey is the organisational journey that we all walk together or not at all. And because we share a servant leadership style here, and because our donors are part of the team, that's how we engage with them. So when we were thinking about this, and we said, if we apply that one team principle alongside the hallmarks of a servant leadership culture, we begin to see that the drivers for staff morale and retention, where you normally see servant leadership models, are exactly the same principles that drive donor loyalty. Effectively, we're treating our donors like employees. And even more than one team, we often refer, as you heard Jill refer to there, we often refer to ourselves collectively as family. So everyone is galvanized behind a clear mission. Our successes enable us to give the gift of joy to the donors and celebrate them for their success. This means that we all speak from the heart and build personal, authentic relationships. And because we hold our donors in this regard, we can share the highs and the lows, and they become invested in the journey of the organisation. There are no walls between staff and donors, no walls between programmes and fundraising. We're all pulling in the same direction. Heidi.
Thanks, Jo. So I want to take a moment to delve into how we in the programs at Animals Asia strive to serve our incredible donors and supporters. At the core of what we do in programs is a profound understanding. We are the hands, the eyes, and the hearts of our donors. And we truly recognize that if our donors could, they'd be right here with us at the sanctuary, caring for their bears themselves. Instead, they've entrusted us with this vital task, and it's a responsibility that we really do not take lightly at all. Of course, as fundraising professionals, you're all familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs. What we're doing fundamentally is helping our donors ascend to the pinnacle of self-actualization. We're enabling them to live out their deepest values and beliefs by contributing to a kinder, a more compassionate world, one where animals are protected and cherished. And it's together that we're making that vision a reality. So now let's talk about something though that's very close to my heart, and that's our live streams of bear rescues. When I step in front of the camera, I'm never just addressing the lens. I am speaking to a person. Very specifically, I often envisage a woman who is sitting in her home, surrounded by her beloved cats on her sofa. And in that moment, I'm offering that woman something truly special, an intimate, unrestricted view of the rescue of her bear. It's a really powerful connection, and it's one that transcends the screen, and it brings our mission into the living rooms of supporters worldwide. And by personalizing our communication in this way, we forge bonds that go way beyond mere transactions. We're really inviting donors and supporters to be part of the journey, to witness firsthand the impact of their generosity. So we've got another short excerpt from one of the videos where I'm speaking directly to our supporters.
Now, Prozac or fluoxetine will really help, we like to say, get Dawn up over that hurdle. Just let us crack open just a little into her mind and into her heart and start being able to reach out and earn her trust. I don't know a single bear yet, and we've rescued Animals Asia, gosh, we've rescued nearly 700 bears across Vietnam and China now. Not a single bear have we not been able to win over, have we not been able to win their trust. And I know we will be able to do the same with Dawn. And one day, I promise her, as I know that you do as well, that we will be able to piece her back together. And I hope one day I have the honor of being able to show you perhaps Dawn's first steps outside, to feel the grass between her toes, to make bear friends, and just to feel sunshine and know what it means to be a bear again. Now,
So why do we approach our work in this very deeply personal manner? It's really not easy to pinpoint a single reason, but it's something that we instinctively understand as truth. The bears under our care are our donors' bears, and we take that responsibility seriously. A crucial aspect of this mindset is the language that we use at Animals Asia, both internally and externally. We don't just talk about our donors and supporters, we speak of them as integral parts of our team, because that's exactly what they are. Even when they're not in the room, their presence is felt in every conversation, decision, and action that we take. By embracing this inclusive language, we're reaffirming our commitment to being one team. And together as a unified voice, we're making a tangible difference in the lives of these bears and countless other animals. And for that, we are endlessly grateful to each and every one of our donors and supporters. I'll pass you back over to Jo.
Thank you so much, Heidi. And so what are the main takeaways which you all might be able to use back at base? Well, first, I just have the next slide, please, Kay. First, and I think this is really important, and we can't overemphasize this enough, you need to understand that trust is a two-way street. Your donors trust you with their investment, and you must trust them to understand your highs and lows. I know lots of organisations are very reluctant to talk to donors about when things are going wrong or what the challenges are. We don't do that. We open the doors, we talk about everything, and we share. And if you follow us on Facebook or see some of the social media, you will see very openly the highs and the lows that we have. Treat them as part of your team. Share everything with them, including your challenges, your failures, and your disappointments. The real supporter journey is the organisation's journey. Understand that your donors are joining your mission, not your mailing list. Let them in, engage them, and let the walls down. And ultimately, as hopefully we all know as fundraisers, that we are here to give the gift of joy. So give them the credit for the programme outcomes, not the credit for hitting the financial targets. And finally, more than anything, understand that in finding a donor, you have found a member of your family. Treat them like that, and you'll have unconditional love for years to come. Because as we all know, one does not simply leave the family. So in summary, we'd like to leave you with this thought, that whilst we may have bears, every charity can give their donors a bear hug. Thank you all very much, and we very much hope that was helpful. Over to you, Richard and Roger.
Well, thank you, Jo. Thank you, Heidi. I've captured so many snippets here. Absolutely love it. So I'm listening to you. I can see it's hard to tell the difference between Jill, the founder, you who work there, your supporters, all the staff. You are just one big family. And I think one of the things that really spoke to me was Heidi was saying, we are the eyes, the hands, the hearts of our supporters. If they could, they'd be at the sanctuaries themselves. They have entrusted us in doing that. I absolutely love that. It just really gets across how you are, you're all together, and how you've wrapped that up, Jo, with, you've found a member of your family, and unconditional love. Yeah, amazing. So we've got time for some questions, and we've also got a poll. So I think what we'll do first is go straight into the poll, if that's okay, Kay.
Yep, that sounds great. So we're going to put a bit of a finger on the pulse at certain points this afternoon. We want to see how you guys are thinking and feeling about the topics that we're covering. So I'm going to launch now 2 questions for you. Here they are. They should come up on your screen. The first, we want to know how strongly you agree or disagree with this statement. The supporter experience is a priority for every team in our organisation. And the second question on here, how closely do you work personally with non-fundraising teams to engage your supporters? Rarely or never, once or twice a year, every couple of months, once or twice a month, or every week. Those results are coming in. Okay. I'm going to press end poll now, and we're going to share those results. Yeah. So I should have also perhaps asked us to guess what we thought we were going to see. So do we agree or disagree with our opening statement? Supporter experience is a priority. We have 14% strongly disagree there. Slightly more at 22%, somewhat disagree that it's disagree if it's a priority. 8% in the middle, neither agree nor disagree. And then 33% somewhat agree that it is a priority for every single team. And 22% strongly agree, yes, it is a priority for every team in the organisation. That's great to see.
You know, if we'd asked this question, Kay, a few years ago, I think we would have seen really different results there. I think this is really, I'm actually really excited by what we're seeing here. So there's, you know, what's that? 55% agree or somewhat agree or strongly agree. That's amazing. That's I think, well, there's two things. It's, yeah, we're seeing a real shift across charities everywhere, which is amazing. But actually, it says something about the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people here. They're people who are really getting it and understand it.
Yeah.
But of course, it still means there's 50% of them are here saying it's not. But I still think it's a good news story, but a great opportunity for charities to be doing more as well. Thank you, Kate. Brilliant.
Then that second question, the results, how closely do you work with non-fundraising teams to engage with supporters? 12% say rarely or even never. 8% say once or twice a year. Then 28% say every couple of months. 28% say once or twice a month. And then 25%, a quarter upon this call, work with a non-fundraising team every single week to engage with your supporters. That's really, really interesting.
Thank you, Kay. I just wanted to go back to Jo and Heidi. Actually, wondered what your reflections were on those answers as well, on what the poll says.
Yeah, I mean, my immediate question was of the organisations that where the supporter experience isn't critical across all of the elements. I'd really love to overlay their loyalty scores and see whether or not that's actually making a difference, and whether those that feel that the experience currently isn't integrated, whether they would like to see it more integrated, and whether they think that would make a difference. But so I was surprised as well. I thought, you know, I was pleasantly surprised to see the same numbers that you was, Richard. That I think I wasn't expecting to be so high. So, but yeah, I think it's a move in the right direction as a sector.
About you, Heidi, any thoughts on what you've seen there?
I find it quite interesting from a program's perspective, and I guess I always wonder what the experience of the program's personnel in everybody's charities are in terms of understanding and relating to donors and supporters. That would be my big question. Yeah, it's a shame we can't sit down and all chat together in a big circle.
Yeah, absolutely. We've actually got loads of questions for you in the Q&A, and I'm not sure how many we'll be able to get through, but I'm going to select a couple. I'm going to start with this one. So how do we bring donors into our family for a big organisation where the gap between donors is maybe larger than for smaller charities, especially when we have a mentality that donors are supporters who give us money? How do we change our culture?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I actually, as we were growing, this was one of the questions we had years ago when we knew that we were going to be noticed, and we were frightened. We said, God, if we get bigger, are we going to lose our culture? Are we going to lose the heart of the organisation? And I don't think you will, because it's a mindset, and that's really what we were trying to get across today. I think it is about, you know, you heard Heidi say she speaks individually to a person in the living room when she is communicating out. That is a mass communication, that is a one-to-many communication, but it's going out with the mindset of a one-to-one. And I think you heard Jill talking to people about thanking them for them helping us achieve the goals. It doesn't matter how big you are, everybody can give the donors credit. And I would say, as a rule, you know, I often see charities, oh, you know, well done, you've helped us reach our target. Don't ever do that. Don't ever thank donors for helping you reach a financial target. They don't care. They care about what the money was for. So make sure that you're talking about the impact of why you were reaching a target. And I think by really trying to follow the philosophies that we've put across today, actually it doesn't matter the scale. And certainly I do appreciate that not every founder and CEO is going to personally respond to emails. I don't know how long Jill can carry on doing that. All of us are just incessantly amazed at how she manages to keep it up. But it does mean that you can have a personal approach. Certainly we still have a very personal supporter care approach here. Supporter care is critical. Yes, we're looking at chatbots and things like that and what we can do to create some efficiencies, but we'll never take the personal touch away from our supporter care, and make sure that your supporter care team is, you know, front and center and really integral. I've seen oftentimes supporter care teams sometimes seen as the you know, perhaps the lower end of the fundraising model, and that's completely not how we see things at Animals Asia. Our supporter care team are the heartbeat of everything we do, and I would say make sure that you do that. Don't know if that's helpful and that answers the question.
It does for me. I think it's a great answer. But I don't know if it answered for our delegate, our participant, but thank you so much for that question. There are other questions in the Q&A that haven't been answered, and we aren't going to have time to answer them today, but I desperately want to be able to answer those for you. So please, if you wouldn't mind, drop me an email, or anyone of the team here an email, or you could put your email and the question in the chat, but if you're uncomfortable with doing that, that's absolutely fine as well. But please do send the questions to us, and I promise we will get back to you if you send us those questions. There's some great questions there. Yeah, happy to answer those as well. Brilliant.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you both, Jo and Heidi. Absolutely fantastic. So thank you everybody for taking part in the poll. Thank you for your questions. I would say I wish we'd have more time to answer all of them. Brilliant presentation from Jo and Heidi. Thank you so much again. And Heidi, thank you again for putting in the time so late coming in from Vietnam. So brilliant. Really, really lovely to see you. Thanks, Jo and Heidi. I just wanted to, I'm going to hand over now. I'm going to hand over back to Roger and Anton. But before I do, we've talked about measuring loyalty. We've heard talk of the Chase Index. Just wanted to say again, this is the way that we measure and benchmark the Charity Supporter Index. It's kind of one of the things that we do. So what Jo and Heidi have talked about is it's all about emotions, and it's kind of it's like Tash was saying in the chat about actually this is creating lumps in the throat and hairs on the back of your neck. These are the real emotions that your supporters feel. Our challenge about loyalty was how do we measure that and know when we're getting it right? And that's what we've done. And that kind of all of the charities that we're working with today are kind of part of that program. We're probably the only agency that really gets the scientific link between those emotions and then how that translates into how people behave, as Roger outlined really, really clearly in that first session. So yeah, and we dream actually that every single charity gets that, understands that link between how supporters are feeling, then how we can really nurture that and release that to deliver more impact for our amazing causes. So talking about knowing where to have that impact, where can you have the most impact? That's about how we can have impact in the world, but of course we need to understand how we can have biggest impact in our experience as well. And so that neatly links to the next supporter experience insight from our research, and I'll hand over to Roger to talk us through that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Richard. Yep, me again, and not just about impact, but I am going to talk a little bit more about the relationship between loyalty, measuring it, and then the impact that can have on two different types of support here. So, mentioned earlier on about commitment, satisfaction, trust, and one of the beauties of understanding what creates the feelings that we want to create in people is the fact that those are concepts that we can measure. We can measure commitment, we can measure satisfaction, we can measure trust by asking people. We can ask people specific questions that they can answer, and we do that, and we are able to create, on the back of that, be able to create a loyalty score. And it was that I was referring to earlier on, where the loyalty score links directly with ongoing support and future support for it. We're able to map that. I'm not going to go into the detail of this, but you can see that there's There's a spectrum of people from very low loyalty on the left, very high loyalty scores on the right. And what we're able to do is we're able to map that against people's giving and their intention to give. And I mentioned sort of 2 big numbers earlier on. What I really want to show here is that I want to get behind those a little bit. So I think the starting point is, let's look at what does loyalty actually mean? How do we measure it? And for us, we are starting with a survey, and broadly, people that we have a series of questions in there that are asking people about the support experience and how they feel about it, and there are a set of agree, disagree responses. And broadly speaking, the people at the very top are the people that are strongly agreeing with these positive statements, and as we go down, as people agreeing, somewhat agreeing, neither agree nor disagree, and then the chart does go off to the left, but because we're talking about warm supporters, there's very few people that there are people that disagree, and there are obviously people to worry about. There's very few down there. What we're able to do is look at the ratio between how people are responding to the surveys, and in this case, I'm going to show you how they want to carry on supporting you. And as you can see here, this is the chart, the proportion of people, see on the right hand side, the percentages of people saying, yes, I want to continue supporting this charity. And what you can see is that's not a straight line. It's not a linear relationship between the two. At the bottom end, yes, it's only about 20% of people saying, yes, I want to continue supporting. Up at the top, 99% of people saying that they want to. But what we're seeing in the middle is quite steep growth in these 2 areas. If we can get people who, when we talk to them about what they're doing, they say, yeah, that's kind of nice, which is our neither agree nor disagree, moving into that feels right. Then we can really start to increase the level at which people want to continue supporting. Or if we're moving people from I get that to yep, you're right, no, you do treat me that well. Again, we can see some really big uplifts in the proportion of people that continue supporting. But when we get to the very top, look at where we are, and the people that are agreeing with statements. 94% of those people are already saying, yes, I'm going to continue supporting. So yes, there's a little bit of room for growth, but the room for growth, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to go past that quite so quickly. The room for growth is much less when you get to that level. The real growth comes from moving people up so that they in future giving, from being a bit sort of don't really, maybe, through to no, that's good, but it's not necessarily about getting to the that's really, really good stage. Forgiving again, retention. Out of the statements we've tested, I've just listed the 5 here that come the highest in terms of having a direct impact on that. And what you can see is the statements there around what I refer to earlier on as commitment, so that you're working to achieve a goal I care passionate about, or you'll deliver that I care passionate about your work. There's questions there about satisfaction, which is I'm satisfied with the way you communicate with me. And there's questions there about trust and being effective and delivering what you promise to deliver. No surprise, commitment, satisfaction, trust. But what I'm now going to do is show you the same chart, but this is asking specifically about gifts and wills. And what we can see is a very different pattern here, very different shape. So again, at the bottom end, actually it's right down at 1% of people saying, with low loyalty, saying they'd leave a gift in the will. It's up to over 35, over a third of people at the higher end saying that. But what you can really see is the significant growth is in that moving people from saying, yes, I agree, that's good, to, oh, I really, really agree, that's really, really good. And that's where we get people to leave us a gift in the will. It's people that really, really care about us and really want to, it's the people that have really strong feelings, not just that you're doing well, but that you're doing really well and I really, really care passionately. And we also see different things driving that. And all of the 5 statements, the top 5 statements that directly impact on people's gifts in wills and wanting to leave a gift in the will, are what we would term as within our area of commitment. So some very specific commitment statements in there. And it's absolutely that commitment that is what drives gifts in wills for supporters, people who care passionately about what you do, that what you do is important to them. I'm not saying satisfaction is important. I'm not saying trust isn't important. but they're less than commitment. Commitment is the real top driver for gifts in wills for you. So I'm going to leave that there. I'm going to again just leave you with another question to start you thinking around how good your sport experience is. And I guess the question is for you. I've shown you what is the average there across nearly 400,000 supporters that we've researched over the last 10 years. I wonder if it's the same for you. I wonder if it's the same concepts, the same statements, the same feelings that would be the same for you and your supporters wanting to continue more. I'm going to leave you with that thought. So at this point, I will hand back to Richard.
Thank you, Roger. Do you know how good your supporter experience is? Great question. And I think the next speaker, Giannina Walsh, who is the supporter experience manager at Dementia UK, certainly knows the answer to that question. Giannina and Dementia UK have been working with us now for a couple of years, and she's been leading a really interesting, the organisation, a really interesting journey, how embedding supporter experience and really creating that supporter experience journey at Dementia UK. And there's some really great snippets here, some really great insights into how you can start to really bed in a supporter experience in your organisation. So I'll hand over to Giannina, and yes, thank you very much. Over to you. Really delighted you can join us.
Great, thanks so much, Richard. I'm Giannina, and I'm the supporter experience manager at Dementia UK. So first, just a bit of context about who we are and what we do. So our vision is a world where no one faces dementia alone and where everyone gets the specialist supports they need. So Dementia UK are a specialist dementia nursing charity that is there for the whole family. And we provide free, life-changing support and advice to anyone affected by dementia in various ways. So we have a website filled with resources and Admiral nurses where people can book time with on the phone or in person. And as Richard mentioned, we are on a journey as an organisation. So Dementia UK has existed since the 90s, but during the pandemic, there was a period of growth for Dementia UK. So an increase in the use of our services with people needing support during the pandemic, and an increase in income as well from various different streams. So from virtual events and other digital sources. But in-memory income is a significant source of income for the charity as well, because of our cause and bereavement as well, and supporters leaving gifts in memory of their loved ones. So March 2023 was the first time Dementia UK joined the Chase Index, and that was also the year that we launched our supporter experience strategy for the first time. And this year we are going into year 2 of our supporter experience strategy and of the Chase Index, and other organisational things that are happening. So we're developing a new 5-year strategy and are in the midst of a CRM migration as well. So it's again a period of change for us. So how did we go about developing our first ever supporter experience strategy? So we developed it through conducting lots of sector research, so things like joining webinars and sessions today, finding out how other charities approach it, analysis of our database and our donors as well to see what our donor mix look like, who currently support us, consultancy, both with independents and of course working with about loyalty, running lots of workshops internally, before finally forming a project group on board who are collectively known as the champions, which I'll share about a little bit later. So our supporter experience strategy looks a little bit like a pyramid. This is sort of a summarized version, but right at the top of our pyramid are our supporter experience guiding principles, which build on our Dementia UK values. So the guiding principles are there to really support our ways of working, but by linking it to our Dementia UK values, it means that we can try to do this in a way which is in harmony and synergy with the organisation. So just a couple of examples of our guiding principles. So we want to collaborate through insight-led planning and decision-making, sharing learning. So this builds on our value of collaboration. And we want to have a commitment to build knowledgeable, longer-term and deeper supporter relationships, which builds on compassion. So for us to have those knowledgeable relationships with our supporters, we need to understand who they are, how they're feeling, and why they support us, and what they have experienced as well, both with dementia, maybe using our services, and their experiences with us as a supporter. We have a supporter experience specific vision and mission, which is the ideal direction that we want to go in, and it builds on our Dementia UK vision and mission as well. So again, putting the supporter at the heart of that, and acknowledging that they are essential for achieving our vision and mission. So then we have our supporter experience strategic objectives. So our overall goal is to increase retention and engagement. And then for our sub-objectives, we have an aim to improve commitment, satisfaction, and trust. So building on the Chase Index learnings from about loyalties research. And then we have a fourth area as well around building supporter insight and improving operational processes too. So what do we actually do as part of the supporter experience strategy to help achieve our objectives? So we focus on a few key activities which are either around the theme of commitment, satisfaction, trust, insight, or operation. And our supporter experience board helps to prioritize and decide what we focus on each quarter as well. So in today's presentation, I'll give a couple of mini case studies to show how we practically go about that. But for commitment, for example, we've been looking at our approach to cross-sells and how we can make that more supporter-centric. Satisfaction, things like reviewing our welcome journeys. To trust, we've been focusing on how we can improve how we communicate impact communications. And then insight and operations. So on the ops side, developing a learning support plan to help the champions implement the supporter experience strategy action plans, and then developing an insight hub as well, which I'll talk through later. Then right at the bottom of our strategy pyramid, we have our key KPIs and benchmarks. So ultimately, we are trying to measure long-term income, but we've also arranged our KPIs again, somewhat by commitment, satisfaction, trust, and then a long-term income section as well. So just as an example for satisfaction, we look at our mystery shopping scores, which have satisfaction KPIs, and of course, the KPI section in the Chase Index survey. But we might also look at measures of dissatisfaction too, so things like email subscribes, and our complaints as well. So overall, we are trying to take a holistic approach to supporter experience, applying About Loyalty's simple approach. So S for strategy, having a clear strategy document. I for insight, so things like developing our insight hub. M for measures, so things like producing our report with the key KPIs twice a year. P for processes, so things like running our mystery shopping activities to see if there are any bumps in any of our entry points for journeys. L for leadership, so having our champions to help embed and communicate the strategy. And E for employees, so things like developing a learning support plan to go alongside the strategy. And one of our guiding principles, not listed here, is that people should have the tools, time, and resource to be able to implement the supporter experience strategy. And our vision in a nutshell is that we want to develop excellent insight-led supporter experiences that deepen engagement and build long-term relationships with our supporters. So our supporters are at the heart of everything we do. And again, we've gone for a supporter experience definition around how the supporter feels about their experience interacting with us, with a charity. And this, again, could be over a wide range of communications, touch points, channels, fundraising, and non-financial products. So specifically, not just focusing on a specific supporter journey or journey management in isolation. And this enables us to think about our strategy more broadly in the future. So thinking about where our supporters are service users as well, and for example, have used our helpline and engage with our admiral nurses too. For them, it is one journey across the organisation. So a champion in every team. So yes, this is how we go about implementing our action plans and developing the strategy. So as mentioned, we have the Supporter Experience Board who attend quarterly meetings, and this is headed up by the Director of Fundraising and Engagement. And then we have a rep per head of department. And then we have additional representatives who attend monthly meetings. And depending on the size, structure of the team and the focus of our strategy or projects, we have 1 to 3 reps per area as well. But overall, it really is a flexible and inclusive approach. Everyone can get involved in some way. And in my eyes, I think everyone can and should be a supporter experience champion. So it is a team sport. So now just a couple of examples of how we've applied the theory. What did we practically do? So our approach to improving satisfaction. Focusing a little bit on how we could improve on any aspects of dissatisfaction, we used our mystery shopping reports to review touch points and processes in supporter journeys. So this was particularly useful last year when we were right at the beginning and just need that visibility of what is actually happening at different touch points. So we're also part of the Think Stewardship Tracker. So we would look at these reports, analyse them, digest the feedback. And this year we've also used our Chase Index survey reports as well to sense check some of the mystery shoppers' feedback to see if our supporters are also saying some of the same things. And then looking at that and developing into basically just a very long spreadsheet with actions, having meetings and discussions to think about how we could improve any of the process areas or touch points. And so this resulted in lots of different process updates, reporting and training, most of which was led on by supporter care teams. So things like looking at gift aid, our approach to complaints, response handling, but also digital too as well. So looking at how we can improve our contact details on the website. And right now we're looking at how we can improve communication opt-ins as well and make that easier for supporters. So the other part of satisfaction, so since last year, we've held annual welcome and stewardship journey reviews across individual giving, in memory, legacy, community and challenge events. And so our approach, again, to begin with, has been to really try to consolidate as much of the feedback as we can so that we have that audience and supporter journey understanding. So this year, for example, of course, we had our Chase Index results that we could really digest. We had any relevant mystery shopping learnings that could be applied to welcome journeys. But we also conducted some additional focus group research this year as well, looking at motivation to support, brand awareness and things like how we can improve our communication of impact. And then as well, just sort of day-to-day results reports on email performance for welcome email journeys, and looking at welcome survey analysis on what supporters like and don't like. So this was a lot of feedback to digest. So then the next step for us was to just try to synthesize that and pick out what we thought were the key themes. What are the themes that just keep coming up again and again? So things like improving how we break down impacts of support. And then since last year as well, we've been looking at mapping journeys for the first time as well. So just end to end, what we believe should be happening in supporter journeys, looking at each touch point, and then overlaying journeys with any of these feedback areas, so that we can see where are our moments of wow in journeys, where are the pain points, and where are the bits that we might need to keep an eye on. So applying the learning supports plan to that, one of our most popular training activities on the list is the GRIP method of thanking, which was developed by About Loyalty and shared in one of our action planning meetings in the first year. So this is where we review all of our thank you letters and see how we can make it grip the donor by showing gratitude, giving reassurance, inspiration, and demonstrating pride. And again, this plan has resulted in lots of action planning meetings, discussion as well, and follow-ups with teams to support and see how they are doing in updating their supporter journeys. So how did we apply the theory in becoming insight-led? So last year, this was an area which was a challenge for us, because insights is sort of spread across the fundraising engagement team, various bits of audience research, campaign results done in pockets and things like that. But again, because of the growth of the charity, didn't really have a consolidated function. So just to practically support with that, we created a SharePoint site, and this has a library, so it pulls together our day-to-day campaign results, evaluations, audience research, dashboards, learning support, and industry news as well. And the key thing is that it has a supporter experience focus too, as well as our fundraising strategy as well. And it was important for us that the Insight Hub didn't sort of gather digital dust. We tried to bring it to life through an internal comms plan as well. So once a month, there's a newsletter, and the editors will pick something which has been submitted to the Hub that month for sharing and highlighting as well. So it's an opportunity for champions and beyond to share their work, and to continue with the learnings around our supporters. And we have an internal talk program as well, where anyone in the team can step forward to give a short talk about their audience research, their evaluation. So again, we're trying to bring the learnings to life and encourage that discussion too. And then just an example of measuring progress. So how do we go about doing this? So I produce a biannual supporter experience KPI report. So again, that's roughly structured to look at our KPIs around commitment, satisfaction, trust, and long-term income. And then here are just a few examples of some of the KPIs that we started to track. So I've now produced 3 of these reports since launching, and we have seen some fluctuations since we started. So where we've seen improvements, so I'm really pleased to share that we did see an improvement in our loyalty score this year, moving to just about the medium loyalty quartile, which was very satisfying, improving in commitment, satisfaction, and trust. But trust remains our lowest scoring KPI and one which we have a proactive plan for. We have also seen some improvements in our committed giving attrition and repeat action rates as well for challenge and virtual events. But we have also seen some declines since we started our support experience strategy as well. So things like a dip in our challenge events returns. And we've seen some grey areas as well. So some areas where we've seen both improvements and then decline, a little bit of decline, or we're unsure what the results mean just yet because we've just started measuring them. So things like our mystery shopping, we've seen improvements in some areas, a bit of decline, but it's overall around benchmark. And then areas like looking at our further action rates, we've just set up, we've done a couple of readings, but we're still really trying to internalize and discuss what does this mean? What are our goals? Yeah, but it's sort of there for us to think about. But by far, what I think is the deeper value of producing a report like this, which is a lot of work, is that it creates conversations. So it has prompted new approaches to tracking and monitoring performance. So just by having that point in time to be able to check in on reports and results and things like that, it means that the teams can take some time to look at that and ask any questions to any of our analysts as well on what does that mean. So it creates space for reflection and long-term thinking. So particularly for some of our longer-term KPIs. And I think particularly how Dementia UK has grown over the last few years, it has been quite a fast-paced, agile, pragmatic culture, which is really good. But it means that finding time to pause and think has been a challenge. So in a way, it sort of shoehorns this in. And it can prompt action as well. So where we can see a KPI has dipped slightly or is lagging behind. So for example, with some of our mystery shopping results and with our trust scores as well, we can develop bespoke action plans. But again, the conversations are key, and trying to create that time for teams to discuss what they think might be happening in their supporter journeys. So personal reflections on approach, my top 3, what I think has helped with implementation, particularly in the first year and a half. So number 1, champions. I can't really stress this enough, and how key champions have been in our particular context to actually get projects off the ground, things done, and to keep that sort of feedback loop in with the strategy about how supporters feel, providing insight and inspiration, and also just on their side as well in helping to communicate the strategy outside of the supporter experience team, which is just me, and across the charity as well. So essential there. Building on our vision and culture. So a subtle one, but again, the guiding principles at the top of our strategy pyramid can be useful to help explain why we're trying to work in a specific way. And it has been a bit of a cultural shift at times. I'm not sure our culture has been completely supporter-centric, and that has been a change. But for example, saying why we want to spend lots of time on qualitative research, looking at lots of survey results, focus group learnings, gathering all that audience insights. Well, why do we want to do that? Well, we want to build on our value of compassion and understand our supporters. Number 3, so consolidating insight. So again, just having that focus on trying to pull together all of our learnings from various sources, results reports, audience insight, etc., and creating that space to learn and reflect as well, which does sort of slow things down a little bit. But I think when an organization is growing quite fast, I think it's essential to try to build in the reflection space. And what has been trickier? So for sure, in the first year, sequencing projects and finding the right pace. So when I initially started at Dementia UK, I was there to launch a weekly lottery, look into a cross-sell strategy, and help develop the supporter experience strategy as well. So actually, the expectation was that we would start with a cross-sell strategy, but what we really needed to just do, I think, in that first year was just take a step back, gather all of the research, the learnings about our audiences first, and then try to look at the journeys touch point by touch point, getting welcome and thanking as good as we can. In other words, building loyalty and improving satisfaction before we can then take it to the next step. And with that has been, managing expectations on that, on results as well, and what kind of results do we expect to see. So again, even though we are producing that biannual KPI report, it's important for me to communicate that report is a snapshot in a particular moment in time. It doesn't provide the kind of finite answer of how we are doing with our supporter experience, because it's a never-ending question, and in some ways I think supporter loyalty has no ceiling. And navigating structure, so again, being a person of one in supporter experience, I've had to sort of prioritize which stakeholders we kind of communicate with as when. So things like really like to work more closely with the Admiral Nerds team, people team as well. I'd say we really only started doing that in year 2. But for sure, what helps overcome navigating structure is having champions. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Giannina. Absolutely brilliant. And I think you've managed to tell a story, such a broad and deep and everything comprehensive story about what you've done and what you've led at Dementia UK. And I bet earlier on there was people saying, oh, has Animals Asia got any jobs going? I think there were people saying, hey, Giannina, we've got a job for you. So I think every organisation should have a Giannina who can like simplify and really kind of bring to life how to make this happen. It's absolutely brilliant. I love listening to you, Giannina. Thank you. I'm sure everybody would love to have your help in guiding them. So that's absolutely brilliant. So yes, without further ado, let's crack on with the poll, please, Kay.
Yeah, and this time I would like to get our results in and then maybe see if we can guess which way it's going to go. So that's the poll launched. It's a quick yes or no question. Does your organisation have a working group, board of champions, or similar that is dedicated to improving the supporter experience? The results are coming in thick and fast. So before I reveal the results, does anyone on our panel, Giannina, Richard, anyone want to guess if it's going to be more yeses or more nos?
More nos.
I'll go the other way.
I was going to say more nos.
How full is the glass? Is it half full?
I'm going to say more yeses, but only by a bit.
I'll tell you, my glass is going to be quite full later on this evening, but
okay, and that's end of the poll there. Thank you, everyone. So I'm going to share the results. Drum roll, please. It is more no's, but not by an overwhelming amount. We have 25% of people on this call do have that working group, that board group of champions dedicated to the supporter experience. Really good to see.
Nice, excellent. Brilliant. We've got loads of questions, more questions than we have time for. And once again, Giannina, if you're okay for us to ask you to follow up with people afterwards, is that okay? Yeah, brilliant. But what I will do is I'm going to pick one. I had picked it. I should have been quicker, shouldn't I? So this is, how do you create the space to reflect? It's an issue we have where we are all so busy. Having to reflect and learn can be really difficult. Is this something you own and drive, or someone else? How do you create that space to reflect and learn?
Yeah. So firstly, where possible, trying to lead by example and making sure that I firstly have the time to reflect and learn, which has been so essential when developing the supporter experience strategy. I was in quite a lucky position when I started the role, in that so from transitioning to launching the weekly lottery to then working on a supporter experience strategy, bit of a transition period. So I had that time to be able to just do a lot of research, and which I mentioned, which helped to develop the strategy. So I think if you're a supporter experience manager or the likes, and you're beginning a new strategy, I would try to fight for that time at the beginning where actually it's noted as desk research time, and that it's a really essential part. And then with the champions, so again, in some projects, building that time into the structure of the project management plan. So for our welcome and stewardship journey reviews, this year we had 3 workshops. So the first workshop is all about looking through the research, the learnings and the insight. And champions this year as well contributed to that. So obviously I would share any of the key bits from the Chase Index, and then the digital marketing manager would support in producing any results for the email performance, and also supported in providing the results on email survey, content analysis, and the champions themselves would contribute with just any other sort of anecdotal bits of insight on satisfaction, dissatisfaction from their supporters. So it was sort of agreed that before we go into the action plans and the implementations for updating welcome journeys, we have to have that session first. So then the second session is then all about the doing implementation. And then our third session is like a sort of a check-in meeting just to see how champions are doing with that. Again, providing more time to reflect. So one of our favorite activities to do is impossible to possible, where if there is a particular challenge which champions are having to implement something in their journey, we list all of the ways which they might be able to help overcome it, even if it's just a step in the direction to overcome that. So yeah, where possible, building it in. And I think for sure with the projects where we don't have that structure, it is more challenging, because it sort of then means that team members and have to try to bargain that time to add it in. Yeah, and again, I think leaning on culture and the people side can be a way in for carving out time for reflection and learning. So most people plans will have a personal development plan, the space where you can set objectives as well. So again, if you have learning as part of your wider people plan or as part of your general objectives that people will have to include, then that can go into that as well.
Absolutely brilliant. Thank you, Giannina. So I said, yeah, great to hear your presentation, hear your insights, and hear the answer to what was a really interesting question as well. We've got many more on the Q&A, so hopefully we'll be able to answer those as well. If not live this afternoon, then certainly later on. So there's been a few questions and hints actually. So actually one of the things I really liked that Giannina said was supporter loyalty has no ceiling. Brilliant. But what that implies is that you can measure it, right? It implies you can measure the supporter experience. It implies you can measure that. And one of the other questions was, what is the Chase Index? And we've talked about the Chase Index. The Chase Index, we weren't going to be all salesy today, but you know, why not? Hey, so the Chase Index is one of About Loyalty's products and services. We use it to measure supporter experience. It's our product that we can use, that charities use to measure and tell them exactly how good their supporter experience is. So that's what the Chase Index is. It's Charity Supporter Experience Index, Chase Index. And we measure experience using loyalty. We benchmark it. We can diagnose where your experience is good, where it's maybe less good, and then put actions in place to improve it. So it's all about how do we measure something? How do we work out where it's good, where it's bad, and then what can we do about it? How do we move the dial? And guess what? That was a perfect link, because our next piece this afternoon is from Kay and Tash, who are going to tell you about their experiences of helping charities move the dial in loyalty, move the dial in supporter experience. What are the practical things we can do to improve the experience, grow loyalty, grow income, and have more impact? And so without further ado, over to Kay and Tash. Thank you very much.
That was a seamless transition. Thank you so much, Richard. And thank you everyone for making this a great afternoon so far. So interactive, so many ideas in the chat. Really interesting to see. We've got over half of people in this call who are saying, yes, this is a priority for our organisation. Over a quarter of people who have that working group, that champion group set up already. So it's great to see we've got loads of people from across the org, beyond fundraising and supporter care, who are invested in the supporter experience. And we're going to circle back to that. Can you all see my screen before I go any further? Just make sure it's not my big face that we're looking at. Okay, good. So yes, insight into action. Sounds easy. Take one thing from here, we put it into our plans, we see the results, but we know that it isn't. barriers get in the way, life happens, time passes, and suddenly it's a year later and you've done nothing with those valuable nuggets of information that you've been sitting on. We've been there. So if that sounds like you, you're absolutely not alone. And about loyalty, we run action planning workshops where we work with our Chase Index members. We clear out a morning or an afternoon. We bring together all different teams from across the organisation, and we'll pick one area to focus on in their results. That might be a particular fundraising programme or a product. It might be a particular result, their commitment, their satisfaction, or their trust and how they demonstrate impact. And we'll all get our heads together, think about how we can shift the dial, make those small changes that are going to lead to that big impact and improve their experience. We've done this with dozens of teams now, and Tash and I wanted to take this time to share some of the most common things that we hear when we're talking to charities to help them with their next steps. Then there's going to be some reminders from us. It's sort of why it's so important to keep pushing through those barriers and those challenges, and some top tips as well on where to start spreading a bit of that supporter experience magic. So those barriers then, the barriers to action, what might they look like? I'm sure some of these will look very familiar to you. So first off, we've heard already about that culture that prioritizes short-term revenue over the long-term investment and supporter experience, the pressure there is to be doing more with less, to be thinking about the here and now. And sometimes that can mean that there's a barrier there with looking ahead to improving your retention, improving your experience, and seeing that long-term impact. And on that then, finding the time. So it's always fun. It's always going to be something that's more urgent. So finding that holy grail of a free afternoon, evening to sit down and think about the bigger picture. We get it. It is hard to find. But let's say we find it. You then need to be getting the right people in the right room on that morning, on that afternoon. So managing all those schedules and bring people together. You know, why do we do this? And lastly then, where do we start? Let's say we've got the investment, we've found the free day, we've got these people together, so many ideas and inputs. How do we start to get momentum in one direction? Well, some ideas from me here, just some reminders of why it's so important to be pushing through those obstacles, and what we can do about it. Firstly, we've got that QR from earlier here on the screen. Please do use our report. Start to build up that business case and that evidence to why you should be making that investment. So this report has everything Roger shared earlier around commitment, satisfaction and trust. It has case studies, it's got recommendations and more. It's here to make you essentially make the strongest case possible. So that's where we would suggest you start, but there'll be many other sources like this, whether you have an insight hub or similar, to help you build that business case and push back. We're always happy to help you with that. Number two, making the space, making it matter. When you make time for action planning, it's not just for individual planning, it's also making space for really, really valuable conversations and letting you step away from the day-to-day just for a few hours, a bit like today. So well done and congratulations for showing up for your supporter experience this afternoon. So when we're running these action planning sessions, we do help to organise them, we facilitate the session, we take as much of that off your plate as we can, so you have some more time for stepping into your supporters' shoes and starting to think a little bit more creatively around how we can grow commitment, satisfaction and trust. Collaboration. So on that note, growing commitment, satisfaction and trust, bringing those people together. It's not just meaning more ideas, it's about that kind of chemistry that you get when you get all these different teams, not just the fundraising team, but you have the delivery team, supporter care team, perhaps your campaigning team, bringing them all into one room and challenging them with the same question. How do we make those changes? So we've run workshops where we've had perhaps one program group say, oh, we're thinking of doing this with our supporters this year for Christmas. And another group's gone, oh, actually, we've tried that and it worked. And we're able to see those bridges being built in front of us, which is so valuable. So yeah, getting all your different heads into one room, it's such a valuable activity. So this is a reminder, please, to keep at it, keep finding that time. Then lastly, when you've got that long list of ideas, where do you start? Well, I'm sure we'll have all heard of keeping it smart, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time specific. We talk about keeping it smarty. It's keeping it smarty, you know, like the chocolate, I suppose. So we add that extra layer. We'd like to say, think about the issues that might come up as well. So when you've got everyone together, making the most of that morning, that afternoon, not just thinking about what you could do, but thinking about how you could make it foolproof, how you could make it as sort of watertight as possible while you're all together. Because by planning your actions in this group, across different teams, by having those resources and that evidence of the importance that this needs, and by anticipating the barriers that you might need to overcome, you're going to give yourself the best possible chance of creating an action plan that's going to get buy-in from across the organisation, potentially from day one. So I'm going to hand over to Tash now, who's got a few more tips for us on how we can start to spread this action planning energy across an organisation.
Thank you, Kay. So yes, my top tips. The first one is find your tribe. Within your organisation, there will be people who, like you, will be champions of supporter experience. And just like Giannina said earlier, everyone should be a supporter experience champion. And so I encourage you to find out these people, because you will be stronger together and you can support each other by sharing ideas and drive supporter experience within your organisation. Now, on the other side, there will be people who might not yet be believers of supporter experience. And so I'd recommend doing a stakeholder analysis that can help you map out how you can leverage the people that already believe and start to address the concerns from those who are not yet bought into supporter experience. My second top tip is all about remaining curious. So do you remember when you first started your role, your organisation? Did you ever wonder, why do we do things this way? Why don't we do things differently? I suspect as you came into your new job or your new organisation, you may have been really, really curious. And in the words of Walt Disney, being curious keeps us moving forward. It keeps us exploring, experimenting, and opening new doors. So I encourage you to remain curious and ask the why question. And in fact, don't just ask why once, ask it 5 times, because it's a great way to get to the root. And a fun fact, the 5 whys is a technique that was developed in the 1930s by the founder of Toyota, and it became popular in the 1970s, and Toyota still use it today to solve problems. So take that from Toyota, ask the 5 whys. My third top tip is that a little progress every day leads to big results. So why are you seeing a big old ship on the screen? Well, because a colleague of mine in the past said to me that driving supporter experience is like turning a massive ship. It can take time, and that quote really stuck with me, that piece of advice, because it can take time to see results, but a little bit of progress every day can lead to change. And if supporter experience feels overwhelming, what I'd recommend that you do is break down your actions into manageable steps and chunks. And also, don't give up. You can do it. You can do it. My next tip is being aware of supporter experience scope creep. So I feel like everything in some way, shape or form could actually fall under supporter experience. And it can be easy to try and find yourself trying to do and fix absolutely everything and taking every single piece of that puzzle on yourself. And that can become really unmanageable. So focus your efforts on the actions that will make the biggest impact on your supporters. And this should be your guiding light if you ever find yourself stuck in a supporter experience hole. And the last top tip is that you're not alone. Today is evident of that. We have 309 people on this call today, which is just absolutely awesome. And with more and more charities investing in supporter experience, there are people out there who are in the same boat as you. There's a community of us, and we're really warm and a welcoming one. And our door at About Loyalty is always open. You've taken a great step today to come along and join us. So I'd encourage you after today to keep listening, keep learning, and keep sharing. So to summarise, find your tribe, remain curious. A little progress each day leads to big results. So don't give up. Be aware of the scope creep, and you're not alone. And of course, being a little bit cheeky here, but I do have one final bonus tip, which is whatever you do, measure the supporter experience and make sure that it's factored into your targets and KPIs. This is something that we can help you do at the Chase Index and About Loyalty. We can be your critical friend. We have a growing community, and we can help you in your supporter experience journey.
Thank you, Tash. And thank you, everyone. Hopefully that's been some food for thought, some inspiration. So I'll end with a question from us. So do you know how good your experience is, and what will your next step be to turn your insights into action? Back to the studio.
Thank you, Kay. Thank you, Tash. Brilliant as always. Pleasure working with you both and with all of our Chase Index members. I am going to hand over now to Jenna Allcock. I'd like to welcome Jenna, who is Head of Supporter Experience at Breast Cancer Now. Really lovely to see you. I think one of the things before Jenna starts there is how many job titles here that have supporter experience in them now. We've had a supporter experience manager, head of supporter experience. Absolutely great. So yes, it's a pleasure to welcome you here, Jenna.
Thanks so much.
Over to you. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Lovely. Right, I'm just going to try and share my screen, so bear with me 1 second. Okay, so hello everyone. I'm really excited to join you today. And we're going to be talking a little bit about empowering leadership to grow loyalty. So my name is Jenna, as Richard said, and I joined Breast Cancer Now about 18 months ago as their head of supporter experience. My background is more in individual giving, and this is actually the first time that I've focused on supporter experience. Because lots of supporter experience functions are new, like many of us, I'm doing this for the first time. And definitely, you know, I was reflecting the other day and thinking there's no role that I've had which is quite pushed and tested my persuasive and influencing powers, nor that's required me to work quite so closely with leadership. Not because Breast Cancer Now isn't pro supporter experience, quite the opposite. We've got a lot of champions here. But just because, like most charities, we're setting up this function for the first time, and by its nature, all the things that we've just been speaking about, it can be really tricky. So while I definitely haven't always got it right, which I'll touch on at the end, in the interest of transparency, I thought it would be interesting to share some learnings early on-ish about working with leadership to improve supporter experience here. So something I've been thinking about recently is that it does feel like there's something unique about the area of supporter experience, which means it's, you know, you so need leadership buy-in to get things off the ground, but contradictory, it's always really tricky to come by. And I think it's because most charities aren't set up in a way that makes delivering good supporter experience really easy. So hopefully some of this sounds familiar to you. But for example, you know, generally our income targets and our KPIs are in year, not necessarily favouring supporters the long term. Usually team structures reflect income stream and product, but we know supporters might want to do a variety of things for us and that might benefit them. Individual teams usually have their own targets which they're chasing. They want to hit, for example, a certain number of marathon numbers, and they'll increasingly market to higher volumes of supporters to hit that target. And then budgets are signed off by boards on the basis of all of the above. So there's a pull between what leaders are measured on, how charities are structured, and then what might make for good supporter experience. Add to that supporter experience wrongly, you know, has a rep for being a bit fluffy. And that generally, as we move up the ranks, we aren't spending as much time with our supporters. So by the nature of leadership roles, you know, if you're an exec or if you're an officer, you might be chatting to supporters on the phone, you might be writing thank you letters. If you're a head, director, CEO, that's not always going to be the case. But yeah, as supporter experience practitioners, it does feel like we are those fish swimming against the current. So operating in this environment, not necessarily designed for us, we do need that leadership support more than ever. Now, potentially that can make things sound a bit bleak, right? So if we're working against you know, if we're working towards bringing leadership with us, but we need them so much, like how do we overcome this catch-22? How do we go about getting leadership on board? Well, here are 5 things that I found useful over the last 18 months to think about. The first and the most useful thing that I have tried to do that seems to have hit home is around making yourself relevant in your leadership setting and your organisational strategy. So thinking about what are the things that you're hearing being spoken about right at the top of your organisation. How is supporter experience relevant to your overall organisational strategy, not just fundraising and comms? And what is the problem that supporter experience is going to help your leaders solve? So for example, if your organisation's telling, you know, the story of we want to grow our long-term predictable income, you need to make that case crystal clear about why supporter experience is the thing that's going to help solve that problem. If your organisation's talking about expanding its reach or expanding its services, be thinking about, okay, what is the role for experience here? What's the role for supporters here? How do I make that link for people? and reflecting the language that's being used in your organisation, right? So reflecting back exactly the kind of phrases and the things that you're hearing about. The second tip is around making the link to income and not being shy about it. So yes, of course, good supporter experience has value in and of itself. We all want supporters to have a good experience because it's the right thing to do. And, you know, we want to build these bases of supporters who take actions, who volunteer, who spread awareness. All this has value. But oftentimes you'll be sitting in a fundraising department, or you'll certainly be working with senior stakeholders who are very much thinking about and managed on, monitored on, tasked with generating income. So two things that I found really helpful are, first and foremost, using sector research that's out there to make that explicit link between supporter experience and growing income. And there's some great figures out there. You know, there's some ones from a while ago from Adrian Sargent, things like improving retention by 10% doubles the lifetime value of your donor database. And then for those who are involved in the Chase Index, this one will look a bit familiar, but that link that About Loyalty have done between emotional loyalty and ongoing giving behaviour. The other really important add-on to this is that I think sometimes the sector research, it can feel a bit conceptual. So it can be really useful to link that to your own data and your own organisation when speaking to leadership. For example, at Breast Cancer Now, we use a metric where we look at overall retention, so the percentage of people doing a second action for us in the last couple of years. And what we've managed to do is calculate income-wise what a small increase in that would mean for our overall organisational income to make the argument for investment. Again, those involved in the Chase Index, this will look familiar to, but we've got some of our trust statements down this left-hand side. So things like, yes, I trust Breast Cancer Now to deliver the outcome for it promises for its beneficiaries. And what our senior supporter insight lead has done is looked at those people who in 2023 agreed with that statement, those statements about trust, versus those who didn't, and what they went on to do for us in 2024. And finding that those who agreed with those trust statements were worth 2 to 3 times as much just in 2024. And again, that just helps to make those arguments and make those bits of pieces of sector research feel really, really relevant in our context. The third tip is using a supporter experience maturity model. So supporter experience and phrases like transforming your organisation into somewhere that feels supporter-centric, it can feel a bit fluffy, or it can feel a bit nebulous and hard to hold on to. And actually, when you're speaking with leadership, how do you give things like culture or organisational competence, that maturity of the organisation, how do you give it some more structure? How do you make it feel measurable? How do you make it feel like something leadership can pin down and have confidence in? So that concept of supporter experience maturity, which is about the organisation's competence, the ability to deliver brilliant supporter experience, is something that I found really helpful for working with leadership. So you can see a model here, which was originally adapted by the IOF Supporter Experience SIG group a few years ago from a model in the private sector. And it's given us that way of measuring and tracking our organisational competence when it comes to supporter experience. So you'll see running along the top is a kind of a supporter feeling from 1 to 6. And under that, we've got 3 things, 3 organisational competences that we think should lead to the organisation improving its overall culture and centricity around supporter experience. So that's prioritisation, so that feeling that, you know, if supporter experience isn't prioritised and it's not openly spoken about by leadership, it won't get that airtime. It will be the first thing to be dropped. The next row is internal understanding. So how much do we know about our supporters and how accessible is that information? How much do we use it in decision making? And the third is integration. So how lined up are our processes and our experiences? Do we have pockets of really good supporter experience, but pockets of not so good supporter experience? So that model's just been really helpful for helping us pin down something that feels quite nebulous, like supporter centricity or culture, into something that helps leadership feel like, yep, you know, here's where we are at the moment, here's where we want to be. And it's helped us facilitate conversations around the actions that we need to take to move the organisation upwards. The fourth one, and I've debated including this because I thought it was, you know, perhaps too obvious, but it's that thing about, you know, always bring it back to what supporters are saying and use supporter quotes, case studies, experiences whenever you get the chance to illustrate your points, because often that's the thing that really hits home. So definitely share the good and the bad, and you'll see a couple of quotes from our Chase Index this year on the left-hand side. One of the exercises that I ran with leadership in a workshop was around this that you can see on the right-hand side, which is where I've taken an example of a supporter and walked through their first few months at a pretend charity, just to illustrate the various different teams just one supporter might interact with and all the points where things can potentially go wrong. So again, just sort of bringing things to life and bringing it back to sitting in the supporter's shoes. And the fifth tip is around adding structures to help progress. So I definitely agree with Giannina and others who've spoken about this here. So we've only just recently formed our supporter experience board. It's made up of directors and associate directors from across the organisation, featuring all types of time, money, voice support. So I'm hoping this is going to prove a great way to get some airtime with leadership and promote supporter experience internally. So more people are thinking about it, talking about it. So when we were forming the board, we were explicit and didn't shy away from the fact that, yes, good progress has been made supporter experience-wise over the last few years, but that there are organisational barriers to delivering good experience, and we need key leaders who cover all this type of support together to help us on this journey. So at the moment, the steering group are looking at sort of final approvals, strategic support and championing, and we've structured a working group made up of heads and senior managers, meeting slightly more frequently, and more looking at idea generation and stress testing. And we're hoping this structure, again, just gives that, ability to push projects through and also give them airtime with heads and directors and ADs as well. So over the last 18 months, there are definitely several things that I've tried to do that have not worked that I also think are always really useful to highlight too. So the first is not trying to move too fast. So as Tash said, so much of what we're trying to do is a real slow burn, and actually jumping in two-footed into something before you know the environment, the people, the organisation, it's not going to serve you well. The second is not assuming that your stakeholders are on board. So I definitely, on reflection, would have taken a much more structured approach to stakeholder management from the off. I've had several experiences of thinking, yep, this stakeholder loves supporter experience, is on board, and then when push comes to shove, it's not quite there. The third is not forgetting to repeat those key messages. So you might be spending all your time thinking about supporter experience and the importance of it, but chances are your LT might not be. So keep coming back to why it's important, how supporter experience is relevant in your context, and what it's going to enable, what problem it helps solve for the organisation. So my top takeaways and reflections from the last 18 months: make supporter experience relevant to your leadership setting and organisational strategy. Think about how it solves a problem and make sure it's the thing that people are talking about at the top and reflect that in your language that you're using. Make that link to income and don't be shy about it. Use the sector research, and if you can, work with your data team to make it relevant to your setting. Use a supporter experience model so people feel like they can pin something and measure something, make it feel less nebulous, less fluffy. Reconnect leadership with supporters for cut through. So use those brilliant quotes, use those examples, do that at every available opportunity. And add structures like boards, like working groups to help you make progress and give supporter experience that all important organisational airtime. And I think with that, I'm handing back to Kay for some poll questions.
Thank you very much, Jenna. Thank you so much. Shall we get straight into it?
Yes, let's do that.
Okay. Without further ado, 3 questions this time. 2 statements we're asking to see if you agree or disagree. The senior leaders in my organisation understand and value the importance of a good supporter experience. Do you agree or disagree? Second statement, do you agree or disagree that my organisation structure makes it easy to improve the supporter experience? Or maybe you disagree. Then a single yes or no question, do you have a target or a KPI which measures, which tracks, or which links to your experience? Okay, we're going to get a few more seconds. Those results are coming in thick and fast. Thank you, everyone. Right, 3, 2, 1. end and let's share those results. Thank you. There we go. So how strongly do you disagree? The senior leaders understand and value the importance. We have 7% strongly disagree, then going up to 14% somewhat disagree, 12% in the middle, 51% somewhat agree. Yes, they do understand and value that importance. And then 16% right at the top there who do strongly agree. Second question, we'll have a bit of time to dig into these, but just to make sure we can all see them. I strongly do disagree. My organisation structure makes it easy to improve the experience. At the bottom there, 14% strongly disagree, that doesn't make it easy. 37% somewhat disagree there. Much more in the middle this time, 26% neither agree nor disagree. Then 19% who somewhat agree, and only 4% on the call who say it's actually, I do really agree that our structure makes it easy. Now, related to that then at the bottom there, we have 32% of a yes, we do have a target or a KPI which tracks supporter experience, and 68% say no.
Brilliant, love it. Thank you everybody for taking part in the poll, and thank you Jenna, absolutely brilliant, really clear, and some really, really important messages there. I love how you set it up. You were saying most charities aren't set up in a way that makes delivering supporter experience easy, and that is so true, and you forget that. You know, we're like kind of doing our jobs, we've carved out supporter experience, but actually, and often just over the horizon or just in other parts of the organisation, maybe they're not quite ready. And you said as well that supporter experience is fluffy, or can be perceived as fluffy. Obviously, we know here when we're measuring it, it's not. But yeah, so people do see it as fluffy, don't they? And I've not thought, but yeah, the more, if you're trying to engage those senior leaders, they're often, not always, I mean, Animals Asia gave us a great example, but often they're further away from supporters, and the further kind of the more senior staff tend to spend less time with supporters, as you're saying, compared to some frontline. Love those observations. And so that's what makes that stakeholder engagement so important. And I'm really understanding the landscape that you're working in, and that comes back again to your supporter experience model and the maturity. That's what the question that I'd like to put to you from the Q&A is based around there. But I just also wanted to say that we've got at About Loyalty, we have a supporter experience maturity model as well, the simple model, which Giannina referred to. And so there's you know, other models are available. But yeah, understanding that gives your organisation a really clear kind of framework to push against. Where do we sit? Where are our priorities? And it often helps to have that kind of external view to like sort of hold a mirror up, if you like, to the organisation and say, oh, actually, we thought we were just cruising through, but actually this is maybe some of the stickier points. So the question I wanted to put to you from the Q&A, please, was it's how did you decide which themes to include in your maturity model?
Yeah, the simple answer is that it was already done for me. So this IOF supporter experience SIG a few years ago pulled out in a white paper. It's adapted from a model called Forrester's, and they pulled out that prioritization, that integration, and that understanding element. And so we did a bit of sense checking internally, and it really did ring true for us. So there's, you know, we had a bit of debate about, do we want to add in more lines to it? Are there other things that we want leaders to be thinking about in terms of competences? But actually, it's really useful just having the three, and those three all also really rang true for us. So we thought, yes, it's, you know, it is prioritized, but it's maybe not prioritized as much as it could be. Yes, we understand our supporters, but how easily can other teams other than ours access all that information? Not very, not always. And integration, yeah, there's pockets, but there's pockets where it's not happening as well. So I would say, yeah, the short answer is it was already done for me, but also it felt really relevant to us. So it didn't feel like we needed to add other stuff in, and I wanted to make sure it was simple and something that people could remember. So not, you know, 20 organizational competencies that would then feel really cumbersome and overwhelming.
Brilliant. Thank you, Jenna. Yeah, so Forrester's have a model. There are other models. I think when we developed Simple, which is our supporter experience maturity model, when we developed that at About Loyalty, oh gosh, that would have been about 2019 we did that. We reviewed a lot of the commercial models that are available and tested that against, I think it was about 15 different charities, really to make sure that we're focusing on the right areas. Love that model, the one that you've used. Also love our own model. But if you're interested in knowing where your organisation sits in terms of its maturity, and you're kind of after that kind of framework as well, please do get in touch with us or with Jenna, or we're always happy to help as part of our community. So thank you very much. So we've talked a bit about the Chase Index, we've talked about measuring loyalty, we've talked about how good is the supporter experience. One of the things that also came up this morning was that Animals Asia had the best score ever and still haven't been knocked off the top of the leaderboard, if you like. Not that I would want that to happen. But actually, what can we learn from those supporters who have really high loyalty? What can we learn about them? Who are they? Where do they come from? What are the techniques? What are the things that really bring about high loyalty, the best supporter experiences? Where typically is it? Do we see it done really, really well? So I'm going to hand over now to Roger, who's going to give us a new set of supporter experience insights on what we can learn from where it's done really, really well. So over to you, Roger. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Richard. I'm just going to show two charts here. Now, it's going to be tempting to look at them very literally, and in which case they'll be relevant for a few people on the call and not relevant for pretty much everybody. But what I want to do is actually, I want to look behind what's going to be in the charts and think about what it means for us by knowing this. So let me start off with the first one. We've looked at loyalty, we've looked at loyalty of supporters, and we've looked at how loyalty varies between different types of supporters, the different types of supporters that we all communicate with. First thing we did was we looked at the loyalty broken down by where supporters came from. Recruitment channel, if that's what you call it. But we looked at where supporters come from, and are there differences in loyalty between those people. And what I'm going to do, I'm not going to go through the whole thing here, but I'm just going to draw your attention to the very left-hand side of what we're looking at here, which is the loyalty of people recruited through DRTV, direct response television ads, are higher on average than any other supporter that are in the across the charities databases. Now, this is what I mean. Immediately I can say that, and some will be thinking, oh, we've got to go and do DRTV. Others will be thinking, well, that's not relevant for me. That's not the point of what I want to get over here. What I want to do is start thinking about, okay, why is that? Why is that the case? Why are DRTV supporters likely to be higher than anyone else, and what can I learn from it? Which I think really prompts the question of what is it about DRTV and what is it about video? What's the power of video? And I think I mean, perhaps the answer's really obvious, or perhaps the answer's more complex than this. I'm not quite sure. Maybe the truth is halfway between them. But think about moving images, think about video images, think about what stays with people, think about what goes into a typical DRTV ad, the articulation of the problem, the need, and the articulation of the solution and the impact a donation can have. And think about the way that is presented to anybody that in a way that actually it stays with them, it creates memories. I mean, it's certainly emotional. If successful DRTV ads are always emotional, showing the impact. And I think those are things that we can take and apply in all our supporter experiences. I would urge you all to be thinking, okay, video is powerful. How can I bring it in? Of course, it doesn't work in every supporter type and in every channel that you've got, but can you build in that sort of experience for your supporters more throughout the course for an ongoing supporter relationship for your supporters? So that's the first of the insights. I just thought it hopefully will just trigger a few thoughts for you. And then we've looked at a similar thing for loyalty by how someone first supports you, and the type of support. And this is often one of the ways that we're very quick to sort of classify who our supporters are. They're sponsors, or they're regular givers, or they're cash donors, or right at the bottom end members. Again, I'm not going to concentrate on the bottom end of this. I'm going to concentrate on the top end and think about sponsorship. What do we mean by sponsorship? We mean things like sponsor a child, adopt a tiger, those sorts of very almost sort of tangible fundraising products that we provide. And again, this isn't about hoping that you'll all sit there and go, oh, we've got to create a sponsorship product now for our supporters. Absolutely, that's great if you can, but that's not what this is about. It's about thinking, what can I learn from that? And what is it that makes sponsorship so special for the sponsor? And I think, again, there's some things that we can take from this. It's a really close relationship between the donor and the beneficiary. It's a direct, often the charity is such a quiet voice in that. We don't sponsor ActionAid to help a child, we sponsor a child, and ActionAid is the conduit. We don't sponsor WWF to help a tiger, we sponsor a tiger, adopt a tiger. So it's a very direct relationship between the supporter and the animal, the child, whatever the subject of the sponsorship is. And that makes the reporting of impact very, very personal and very immediate as well. It means your communications, they're personal, they're relevant. You're talking about something that you know the supporter is interested in. We've moved away from that, oh, we've got to talk about everything we do as an organisation, to which, for all very good reasons, doesn't necessarily create a great supporter experience. And we've moved to, actually, I know what the supporter's interested in, and I'm going to talk to them about that, which of course is by definition a great supporter experience. And you've built it exclusively for the sponsor. So, I mean, really the question applies, what does this mean for you? How can you take the ideas from sponsorship and those sort of themes and tenets that are coming out from thinking about why sponsorship is so effective with supporters, and how can we apply that through all communications, all supporters, all products, all stages of the journey, and bring them to life for supporters. So again, my role in this is to share a little bit of insight and get you thinking, and hopefully that's given you something to think about in terms of how you can use what you've just seen to build value for your supporter. And I just also that question, I wonder if it's different for your supporters. I wonder if there's different things about your cause, your charity, your experiences, your relationships with supporters that makes it different for your supporters. If you know that, great. If you don't know it, call us. So on that note, hand back to Richard.
So thank you, Roger. Yeah, I think, yes, it's great to know those specifics. It's great to measure this stuff, but it is about how do we apply that to, as you said, to how our supporters, our programs, comms, fundraising, the whole lot's really good. And I think one of the things that's come through really clearly for me today, and because I've been listening, is actually the power of listening and actually listening to what your supporters are telling you, but finding opportunities to ask them as well. I'm really delighted now to welcome Emma Emma Smith from British Red Cross, which is the Senior Voice of the Supporter Manager. Another great job title. There are so many of them. And Emma's here to talk to us about the power of listening at British Red Cross. Over to you, Emma. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Richard. And what a segue into my session. Thank you. Yeah, really pleased to be here today amongst so many supporter experience advocates, and what a bunch of really inspirational speakers we've heard from this afternoon. Loads of these points I've been scribbling down myself. So yeah, today I'm going to be focusing on sharing one piece of the puzzle, which Tash kindly mentioned earlier about, you know, when supporter experience can feel like it's an unmanageable beast or something like that. Maybe just picking up one piece of the puzzle is a good way to approach it first. And this one piece, I think, is a good one, and is something we can tackle together in terms of listening that can have big impact on your organisation and what you're looking to achieve. So at the British Red Cross, where I'm working, this piece of the puzzle sits under something which we call the Supporter Experience North Star. So this is basically a vision which has been purposefully built to help be that guiding light, which we often hear when we talk about supporter experience, and we're not sure on the direction that we're travelling. Is it the right way that we're going? Are we doing the right thing? What is this? And we've spent quite a lot of time developing this over a few years, and more recently actually refreshed it to ensure it's still fit for purpose and relevant. As we know, the world is always changing around us, and we're reacting to that. So although this afternoon I'm going to focus on that listening and that supporter voice that Richard mentioned, I think it's helpful to have a bit of a grounding as to where that came from. So this light, our supporter experience North Star, understands that experience is built up with every interaction we have with supporters. So that might be asking directly for donations, quite obvious. It might be something less obvious, so just the visibility of your brand or your organisation and what you do. And it might be the most unobvious thing, which I think often gets forgotten, which is choosing to be quiet and not actually engaging or talking or communicating with your supporters. It also reminds us that those that have a positive experience with us, aligned to their values, our values and their needs, are more likely to choose us again, so to choose to support the British Red Cross. And it's built on a reflection of our values. For us, that's being compassionate, dynamic, inclusive and courageous, as well as supporter needs. So these are things we've researched that might make a big difference. So how people feel at different points, whether that be feeling like they're part of something, you know, united together, or inspired that there's hope in what can feel like quite a dark world at times. And the final element of our North Star is design principles. So how we internally can ensure that we deliver the elements of this. And that's where I'm at. So that's what we're looking at today. And here is one of those design principles, which is to understand our supporters by seeking feedback, actively listening and learning about them, giving them opportunities to be truly heard. So that's really key for us. In other words, you might describe this as being empathetic, so seeing out someone else's world, appreciating them as a human being, understanding their feelings and communicating that understanding back to them. And perhaps that could be the start of a genuine connection between our brands and people, and something that Roger often talks about in terms of the emotion, that heart, those feelings that we have. And this is a place where the Red Cross often start when we map out supporter journeys or do other activities. Before we dive into thinking about what our organisation is and what our needs and our objectives are, we need to step back and take a minute to think about people. What are people thinking? How are they feeling? What are they seeing? And what are they doing? And in order to achieve that, we need to make an effort, step into their shoes and open ourselves to understand them. So on that note, I'm going to dial in Kay to help me out with a little bit of a poll, technical risk here doing this halfway through my presentation, but I'm really keen, like Richard said, to understand more about you. So my question for you is, first up, what is it that drove you to get to where you are today? Why did you choose to work where you do? So feel free to choose one of the answers that best aligns with your motivations. It might be, if you're anything like me, that it falls into a few of these categories, but try to think, just think of it quickly and pick the one that you're most drawn to. So is it a personal connection to the cause, a belief in the organisation's mission, alignment between your values and the organisational values? It might be just your relevant skills and experience that you've got, or it might even be something else that's not listed. Do feel free to put it in the chat if you've got any other ideas on that that's driving you to do what you do today.
Okay, I'm going to share those results.
Brilliant, thanks Kay, lovely. Ooh, look at this. So we've got quite a high response in belief in the organisation's mission and desire to make a difference, 41% in that. And then underneath that, looking along, relevant skills and experience is quite high. A personal connection to the cause and alignment between values is kind of in the middle, and then something else, 5%. That's really interesting. Thank you very much for joining me on that. And I think
I want to interrupt. I
Sure,
just love that.
go on.
I love that. It's so much. I've got so much I could say. We could have a whole afternoon all about that poll all by itself. But I just I just had to explode with enthusiasm for that poll, Emma. Thank you. But brilliant stuff. Thanks for that poll. I'm going to shut up now.
Absolutely, no worries. Yeah, and I think it's really interesting also, you and Heidi were talking about, you know, us all coming together, whether we're staff, donors, anything else in between, like all of these things, volunteers, any part that you play, and the similarities between that is quite interesting in my head as well. So let's hold that thought and come back to it. Just like in that moment, as we heard then, it's really interesting and great to give people the opportunity to be heard and allow them to reveal a little bit more about themselves, of course, if they're happy to. And with our supporter experience North Star in mind, if we don't understand what drives support in the first place, we sometimes might miss an opportunity and not have a strong foundation to build the best experience on. So to achieve this, it might sound simple, but yes, we need to listen. And I'm sure, as many of you will be aware, before you listen, you might need to ask, and to take that first step and offer the opportunity and the space to allow people to be heard. So that is why we ask supporters and different people numerous different points in their journey with us the question why. And here we have one example of a pop-up survey that we deliver straight after someone makes a donation on our website. But this question could also be asked during a one-to-one conversation with a supporter, someone that's requested more information, someone that's signed up to an event, or any other interaction with your organisation. At the Red Cross, we ask this at both what I call transactional points, so close to an interaction, just like this, after someone's donated. It's targeted around that. So we're finding out really interesting information about what's driving someone to donate to a specific appeal. And then also wider in activity that isn't directly connected to an action. So that gives us more of a wider view, a strategic view, maybe once or twice a year across a much wider group of people, just like what we do with the Chase Index alongside all those other key loyalty questions. So capturing these responses in supporters' own words from this super simple question, I think can tell us so much about what's important, about the action they've taken, and really bring it to life. Suddenly, what might be reported on as receiving a donation of, say, here's Emma, she's donated £5, is potentially filled with emotion, relevancies, human words, and it's something that they've chosen to describe and share with you. So it's really, really interesting and vital information. So, because I had alluded to this before, but we've got another round of a poll. With this in mind, I wanted to ask you to think about who supports your organisation right now. My second question for you is, what do you think drives most of your supporters to interact with your organisation? And there's no prizes here, there's no wrong answer. It might just be a complete assumption, and there's no judgment here if you don't have any idea. Or you might have a really strong idea, so that might be better. You might have done a survey, you might have asked supporters. Perhaps it falls into a similar theme as to why you are driven to do the work that you do. So we might see if we have any connection here. But yeah, here are the answers, the options that you can select. Again, just choose one. It doesn't matter if you're across a few, just go with your instinct. So we've got a personal connection to the cause again, belief in the organisation's mission again, alignment between your values again, relevant skills. Oh, I think this might be slightly different poll. I was thinking influence from the external environment as that fourth option, and then something else not listed or no idea. But please just take that, instead of relevant skills and experience, maybe just imagine that there's influence from the external environments. That could be things like news or media that they consume.
Thank you, Emma. That's a bug in the polling machine there, but yes, yeah. Exactly. Okay, let's look at the results.
Ooh, interesting. Okay, so it's gone kind of neatly into a kind of order there. So we've got 52% of people saying a personal connection to the cause, 36% of people believe in the organisation's mission, and those things might be really closely connected, I guess, depending on the way that you describe that at your organisation. We've got 9% of alignment, 1% relevant skills and experience, but that might be with the confusion between the other answer of news and media or something else. So yeah, really interested to hear what those something else's might be and the things that you think that might connect to. And I already can't remember what people said to the work question, but I think it was slightly different. That's interesting in itself as well. I think personal connection was a little bit lower down.
It certainly was, yeah. It was about 16% for that first question. So there's a big difference between supporters and who we've got on the call. Yeah,
absolutely. People seeing it in a different way, which and I could just stay here all day doing quizzes and polls with you, Kay, but we must move on. So with this in mind, we talked about like asking people what their motivation is. You might be thinking, great, That's nice in itself. We've asked someone a question, we've heard about what they had to say, but what should we do with this information? And I think it's really important to put the point across that we don't want to waste supporters' time. Their time is valuable as well. Our time is valuable too. We don't want to ask something if we're not going to do anything with it. So I think it's really important to value that and appreciate it and try and learn something from it and act on it, which will obviously come to later, I think. But at the British Red Cross, one of the actions that we've taken is to work on a way to quantify the open text by supporters. So we've actually created 7 high-level themes by building a framework that allows us to consistently measure and see trends in the way that people are answering this question. And I think we talked a little bit about it before, that, you know, if something's important, measure it. So this kind of brings that to life. And our framework is bespoke to the Red Cross. We designed it on the most common answers that we'd heard in the past. But as you can see, there are a number of areas which you could literally apply to any sort of cause. So we've got things like trust, news, media, personal connection, humanitarian reasons, personal beliefs, emotional response, and external influence. But underneath this sits a whole host of sub-themes and categories. And those are things that we build be either contextual themes, so we use tech and a platform that we plug this data into, and it will use magical powers to look into that language and unpick the different ways that individuals might describe what we would class as the same theme. So, for example, what we call humanitarian reasons might be people that say, people need help, that's the reason I'm giving. But we'd also pick up things like, because I want to alleviate the suffering of people affected by the war. So those things would then be grouped up together. And then we also use a technique with keywords that may mention specific things. So that might be a media outlet, a specific newspaper, a specific TV source, or a specific corporate partner that we're working with. So when we use this framework to quantify open text into themes, we have a lot better visibility of trends over time, and we can review and compare by different appeals and look at the sentiment and positivity of language used in the answers. These can then highlight to us the areas of interest or opportunity to act on, as I mentioned earlier, whether that be developing communications to align better with what is driving donations, or innovating to create new products or ways of interacting with the charity that people are mentioning naturally that doesn't quite exist yet. So this is where that real value comes in, to build income and loyalty with supporters and new audiences. But another crucial element of value, one that might be, in my opinion, a little bit underplayed, of what you can do with these supporter motivations if you're collecting them, is to also utilise these words to amplify the supporter voice in general and embed a culture, as we heard a little bit about earlier, of listening internally across the organisation and beyond at events like this. So one of the ways we do this is by scattering supporter motivations throughout relevant areas of our trustees' annual report, which is obviously publicly available. So this aids to display the connection to the cause between donors and the people that interact with us, and the services and operations and activity that the organisation delivers from the generous donations that are made. So here we have one of the quotes on the page where we describe the impact we have in the UK emergency response space. And that quote reads, "The British Red Cross accords with my own humanitarian values. It supports nations and individuals in emergency and crisis situations, and also provides longer-term help where needed." And I just love that, like, because you wouldn't expect someone to sort of say that off their own back, you know, that goes into quite a lot of detail, and it just brings that to life. Internally as well, you can see an example on the screen where we share monthly supporter motivations in a pre-slide. And this is on screen as our directorate congregates for our monthly town hall, which is where we spend an hour hearing about team members, what they're working on and updates. And there's one of my regular favourite segments, which is our supporter of the month. But this really, I know we've talked a lot about time and how that is really sparse. This utilises that time where we're all getting ready on Zoom or Teams, and we're all getting into a room and we're not doing anything else, but it has those motivations loud and clear on the screen so that people can see them without maybe even noticing, you know, they can sort of just have a little look, have a little read. And this tiny promotion of supporter motivations helps to drip feed that connection to our wider team and boost team morale about the great work that they're achieving and how they're playing a part in successfully inspiring people to do something and their reasons why. So on that same wavelength, on our internal intranet that is available across the whole organisation, one of my jobs is also to post blogs about supporters, again, highlighting some of those all-important motivations. And this can come in the shape of feedback and those that aren't so close to the marketing and fundraising work, but also interested about hearing what we're up to and how we get to the ideas that we have with supporters. So this can bring it to life right across the breadth of people that work across the organisation. And here we've shared what our supporters have been saying in our recent surveys, alongside motivations, again, to bring to life how supporters feel about the British Red Cross. So this quote reads, "The British Red Cross are the unsung heroes and do invaluable work in the UK and worldwide." And when it comes to the marketing and fundraising space, earlier this year, we worked with the team at Storykind and held supporter interviews ahead of our winter appeal creative proposition development. So amongst an array of questions we were asking supporters, we of course asked them why they chose to support the Red Cross and how that all came about. And this was a great way not only to warm up into our conversations, getting to know them a lot better and hearing the truth about our connection, but also made them feel heard and that they were playing a role in the charity beyond just that one-way relationship or transaction. And in the words of the creative strategist that was helping us on this work, they said, this was more than just listening. It was actually finding the catalyst for the foundational insight for the biggest fundraising moment of the year. So you can just imagine the value that was ignited from these conversations. And it actually played a really big role in delivering fantastic creative and now record-breaking results to date as well. So beyond that, I now attend the team's fortnightly showcase and I share with them how supporters are reacting at the other end. So what they're playing back to us now about their motivations. And it's really delightful to see that full journey of impact of this kind of insight being at the beginning of the campaign and driving how that creative is developed right the way through to then seeing donations coming in and how people are feeling about that time when they're making their donation. And of course, we feed all of this information into an array of other workshops and activities, just like the action planning that we conducted with About Loyalty earlier this year, following our participation in the benchmark, the Chase Index, and looking forward to how we could implement those actions and what we could tackle next. Plus in other areas like innovation sprints and journey reviews. But ultimately, it's all about understanding our supporters better, which results in higher morale for our staff, better and more relevant communications with our supporters and potential supporters, and developing products and offerings or services that align better with their needs. And all of this has the potential to stem from simply asking questions like, why did you choose to do that today? So, as I alluded to before, this is where the true value is created. And this might look like a little bit of a negative chart, but this visual displays there is, of course, an investment to be made in creating that value, especially when it comes to things like data. So like with many processes, this can be a cost to your organisation, whether that's a financial cost, resource, time, or just energy, but it doesn't have to be overly complex, which leads me nicely onto my top tips. So these are some of the things I wanted to share from my experience that you might want to consider if you're thinking about applying some of this listening and harnessing the power of the listening. So I think I've heard it already today before, but it's all about time. So don't spend too long getting to the insight. It's important to get that insight right, but make the processes as simple as possible and always remember your overall objective and outcome. At times, for me at least, this might feel quite frustrating, especially if you have really big and bold ideas of ways that you want to do this and what you want to do with it. You might actually have to scale that down a little bit more before you can get to those more complex ways of working. So have a little think about that. Another nugget on here is to try different things. Not everything will work for everyone, and you need to approach listening in different ways for different audiences. And that's both thinking internally, like who are you trying to influence, or who are your key stakeholders, and also externally, so your supporters, your donors, who you're talking to. But remember to be patient with this process. You can't learn everything overnight. I've definitely learned that you might need to try things for what feels like a really long time to see if it's making a difference or not. And then you look back and see, oh yeah, actually that's landed now. It might have taken 12 months, but it's definitely got there, and people are harnessing it, or they're remembering it, they're bringing it up for you. Another thing is never to lose sight of the people who support your charity. I think that goes without saying, but how might you actually amplify your supporters' voice across your organisation? I think everyone plays a really specific role in supporter experience, and each of this can build up and have a ripple effect, which ultimately will shape how your supporters perceive your charity and what then they are inspired to do with you. And then when we get to numbers and KPIs, I think that's a great focused way to monitor progress, but words definitely help to tell a story and bring that data to life. And it was great to hear that in Jenna's presentation earlier as well. So if someone has opened up and shared with you what has driven them to support your organisation, where could you then share this on and bring a human back into the conversation? And lastly, maybe more of a tactile thing and a consideration for you and your organisation, but when is a good time to ask? And how frequently is most appropriate? And with that in mind, I've got my last poll for you. So because at the British Red Cross, we're looking for ways to improve our programme of activity that sits behind asking supporters what drives them to donate and our wider Voice of the Supporter work. I'd be really interested to hear from you. How often do you ask your supporters for feedback on whether they'd choose to support your organisation? So is that never, or not in the time that you've ever seen while you've been working at the organisation? Maybe it's once, maybe it's a few times at different interviews, or maybe it's quite a lot. So you feel like you couldn't even ask any more than that. You know, it's numerous touch points, both related to an action and beyond.
Are we asking for predictions here from? I think never will be really low.
Interesting.
I'm hoping never will be really low.
No, I
Anyone
think,
else?
yeah, I'm going to go with once, like
That's
right
your
at the
peak,
beginning.
is it?
Not that we're
Okay.
asking for details, but in case you were.
My glass is half empty this time. I think numerous will be very low. I'm going to go for a few times.
Yeah, I'm going to go with a few times as well.
I can't play because I can see the results, so I will not keep them from you anymore. Here they are.
You didn't have to tell us that.
Ah, a few times, Roger. Congratulations. Really interesting. Yeah. Well, that's great to hear. I think obviously I'm all about the power of listening and harnessing that. So I think that's fantastic to hear 45% of people saying a few times. Only 16% of people no, never, not in their time. 28% of people once, and 11% of people at a lot of touch points. Really interesting.
Excellent. Can I just say a big thank you, Emma? I really enjoyed that, and I'm going to go back to your job title, Senior Voice of the Supporter Manager, because having a voice of the supporter at a charity, it's like it's I hate the phrase, but it's a bit of me. It's like I absolutely love it. It really is everything we should be thinking about. That just really brings it to life. Even sometimes supporter experience can be a little bit of a not barrier, but voice of the supporter just says exactly what it is, isn't it? And I love one of your top tips, so start small. So we've had quite a lot of people on the chat saying, I'm from a small charity, I'm from a team of one. And actually, British Red Cross is not a small charity, but you are advocating to start small. And I just love that. So actually starting small is something that everybody can do. And measuring the experience is something that everybody can do as well. So I just absolutely, I really love that. And keep trying it, try new things, keep it small. Yeah, really good. And just like bringing those quotes, bringing the voice of the supporter into the organisation, really inspiring. Absolutely love it. And I loved your presentation. And I just took a step back and thought, Joe, Heidi, Giannina, Jenna, and you, Emma, today, the people who contributed, what amazing stories, presentations, thoughts, advice, tips, and hints. and hear about loyalty. That I forget that we have the privilege of working with people like you every single day and having these kinds of conversations every single day. You're part of our community. This morning we had 45 people at a workshop talking about how do we grow and improve the experience for those supporters who are kind of giving at a mid-level. Really fascinating thoughts and insights. And just, yeah, I do sometimes forget what a privilege it is to work with the community of charities we do. So thank you, Emma. Absolutely brilliant. I have a question for you from the chat. This is from somebody who said, you remember the little pop-up question, the little red one, which was, why did you choose to donate today? So they said, we ask the same question when people donate, and I get really excited to hear why people have chosen to support us, which I think is great. This question is, what are your tips when people choose not to interact with you when this question is asked, even if they may have donated significantly?
Absolutely, because you're right, not everyone's going to answer this, and I think that's quite obvious, isn't it? You know, not everyone, it might not be the right time, it might not be the right moment. They might just not be interested in sharing that information. It's completely a personal decision. So yeah, I think, you know, bearing that in mind, there's a few options to consider whether to ask again at a different time or to ask in a different way that might be a different way to engage someone, you know, whether it be a pop-up online when they're in the middle of something or having a conversation with a one-to-one donor. It depends on the kind of level in which you're kind of interacting with someone. You might, especially if they've donated significantly, I'd imagine that you've got quite a strong relationship with them. You might not, I'm just making an assumption, but there might be other opportunities to weave in that question that might be really, really subtle as well. So, you know, not being put off that if I don't answer it once, that it was something personal towards you or the organisation. You know, I don't think there's any harm in trying a few different approaches to it.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you, Emma. I have to apologise for interrupting your presentation, but I got so excited by the results for your first poll. I really did. And I think it was the one where it was, why did you choose to work for the organisation? And the peak was around mission. It's like, I care so much about what we do as an organisation. And I do absolutely love that. But I wonder how well we understand our supporters' motivations for joining, and actually how well we reflect those. And I think sometimes the way in which we manage relationships with our supporters is it can sometimes be a bit more about us than a bit more about them. And I think trying to unpick that and understand, you know, really how do we treat our supporters best and what really matters, and when broadly when do charities do this the best, and where do we all need to kind of pull up our collective socks, I think would be really interesting. And I think Roger now is going to share us a little bit of insight perhaps into what that might look like. And in our final supporter experience insight. So Emma, you've switched off. I just want to say another big thank you to you. A real pleasure to have your thoughts and share your thoughts with all the people here today. And thank you. Over to Roger.
Thank you, Richard. And yeah, echo my thanks to Emma and to all the speakers today. Fantastic. Thank you so much. I'm going to finish just by putting this question out there. Are your supporters really happy? Now, you can read this question in two ways, depending on how you put the intonation on it. You could ask, are your supporters really happy, and thinking about getting them right at the top end of how they feel about you? Or actually the question might be, are they really happy? Are you sure they are? And actually, I want to pose it more in the second way than the first. Yeah. And I want to give a thank you and acknowledgement to Chris Keating from National Deaf Children's Society, who was actually the first person that pointed this out to us as well. We've talked all afternoon about commitment and satisfaction and trust, and the fact that we need to build those three feelings with supporters: feelings of commitment, feelings of satisfaction, feelings of trust. Of all the supporters, as we've said, nearly 400,000 people now, we've seen that on average, commitment tends to be highest, closely followed by trust, and then satisfaction, it tends to be a little bit lower. In fact, this is what Chris pointed out to us, the number of charities, 46 charities that have measured their loyalty in the Chase Index, across those 46 charities, the number of charities where commitment is their highest, their strongest driver, is 23. The number of charities where trust is their strongest driver is 23. And for those of you that can do maths, you'll realise then that the number of charities where satisfaction is the highest of the drivers is none at all. We have no charities that have ever taken part in the Chase Index where satisfaction is the highest scoring driver. And I don't think that's a reflection on the charities. I think that's probably a reflection on the way all of us as charities communicate with supporters. I think it's a reminder in some ways. I mean, there's a good side to this. There's a reminder in some ways of just how important commitment and trust are, that it's not just about satisfaction on its own. But I suspect it's also a reminder, and I've heard this phrase used a lot over the years, that people give despite how we treat them rather than because of how we treat them, and that we need to do better. Now, we've touched on the difference between when we started 10 years ago and today, and I mean, if we'd run this webinar 10 years ago, we might have had 20 people coming rather than, as we said at the start, nearly 1,000 people registered for today. Which is just phenomenal for all over the world. The world has changed massively. That there was nobody had the phrase supporter experience in their job title. Even the concept of supporter satisfaction was little understood. It's changed massively in that time. But I do think that it's a wake-up call to us all that we've still got a long way to go in building the sorts of supporter experiences that create magic for people and people talk about. And that's what we want to do. So I just want to leave with that thought. We've heard today some fantastic work being done across the charities that have spoken today, and I know of more across other charities as well. It's just fantastic to see. But I think as that, just a little bit of a wake-up call. There's still a way to go. But I'll also throw at you, I wonder if you, listening to us today, I wonder if you're the exception to this. Of course, there's only one way to find out, to understand that, and that's to find out.
One thing you're going to take from this afternoon into next year, stop, have a little think. You know, what's the one thing? If there's one thing, you've probably got a list of lots of things, as I have. But if you can pick one thing from this afternoon to take into next year, what would it be? Please do pop it in the chat. Share with your colleagues, share with our community, share with the fantastic presenters here today. And I'm not going to pick on anyone in particular from the panel, but if you're ready to answer the question, please do come off mute and let us know what you're going to take from this afternoon into next year.
I can go, Richard, if that's helpful.
Thank you, Jenna. Yes,
I was going to say, yeah, I loved Emma's section on, using supporter quotes in really simple ways, like on the screen that comes up when people are dialing into a meeting or in reports or things like that. And I just thought, oh God, that's such a good one. It's such a small thing to just implement and to just have that as this is the norm. We're thinking about it. We're looking at it. So yeah, some of those little bits from Emma's presentation, I'm definitely gonna pinch shamelessly.
Excellent, thank you, Jenna. I'm just going to pick one from the chat, and there's loads coming through, but there's one from the chat which I really like. This is from Joe and Heidi. Don't ever thank donors for reaching a financial target. They don't care. Thank them for the impact they made. Love that. That's one I particularly like from there. So who else on the panel would like to kind of share their takeout from the afternoon? So we've got Giannina, Emma and Joe, or anybody from About Loyalty.
Yeah, I can go. Yeah, I was going to say the same as Jenna, really. I think actually bringing our supporters back into our supporter experience strategy. So we focused a lot on how we do things, getting things done, structuring the strategy. And we have completed some audience insight this year, but I think just the way to really bring it to life is to actually use those learnings in a creative way. And so even with our Insight Hub, for example, could we actually arrange an Insight Hub talk by one of our actual supporters, just sharing why they support us and what motivates them, and just keep it really interactive, engaging, and at the front of people's minds.
Love it. Thank you so much. I'm going to pick another one from the chat, but if anybody else wants to pipe up, of course, please do. Love this one. Staff exist to empower supporters to achieve the mission together. Again, I think that one speaks probably to Animals Asia. Not that I'm biased here, but it is, isn't it? It's like we don't. It's not our mission. We're the servants in that role. It's the supporters' mission. It's they're the people. That's why they've stepped up. They aren't interested in making a donation. They're interested in changing the world. And actually, it's our job to achieve that for them. So I love that. We're there to achieve the mission together. It's our supporters' mission. It's how they want the world to be different. That's why we're here. We're there to serve them. Who else would like to?
I'll dive in, actually. I mean, for as much as we talked about us being very supporter-led, actually, I was thinking we don't have a group internally that is about making sure or looking at ways that we can enhance the supporter experience. There is no working group for it, I suppose, because we can't just, in some ways, it's just integral. But I don't think that means that having a working group wouldn't add value. So I think I'd love to go away and set up a working group exactly for that, a supporter experience group that can continue to make us better. So I loved that idea.
Brilliant. Thank you, Jo.
That really ties in with sort of, it's not necessarily a tip, but we've heard a lot about strategy and tips and ideas and things like that this afternoon. But actually, there was a common theme that ran through, I think, all four, and that's that remembering that supporter experience is a people thing. And obviously, we talk about supporters as people, but internally as well, you all talked about ways of talking to your colleagues and bringing your colleagues on board and sharing and building some excitement and understanding all colleagues, and that for me just reinforced just how important it is that you're not on your own doing this, that you need to build that the way the organization just thinks about it as well.
I want to add something, Roger, which is that it takes a village to raise supporter experience. And what I'm going to take from today, actually, I want to try and bottle it up and take it to next year and like sprinkle it on me whenever I need to have that inspiration, is that, what a fantastic community of people we have here with us today, and who have joined and who have listened, and how amazing all of that inspiring ideas that you've all given us today and that we've seen in the chat. And I want to bottle it up and take it with me. And I want everyone to sort of remember that as well after today, that, yeah, we are here. So, yeah.
Yeah, Tash, you've taken the words out of my mouth there. I think it takes a village. And I think this afternoon's felt such a generous afternoon, like generous with your time, with your ideas, your insights. The thing that stuck out for me across everybody is that it is about making those small but steady changes. So I'm sure there'll be people sitting and thinking, oh my God, I can't do all of these things that I've heard all at once. And it's about picking one thing, picking a direction and start, making a start and then going from there.
Thank you, Tash. Thank you, Kay. Any more thoughts, more reflections are one thing to take from today into next year?
I'll definitely be taking that sense of curiosity. I think it was the Walt Disney quote that really stood out to me. Thanks, Tash, for visualizing that and staying curious and navigating this what can feel a little bit wild, a little bit fluffy at different points, remaining focused as Jenna was talking to. I would also love to bottle it up and sprinkle it around next year.
That's absolutely amazing. I wanted really to kind of round off this year's Loyalty Day with a quote from the chat, which for me sums it up. It sums up so many of the talks that we've had today, sums up so many of the comments, but it's, thank you. You have reignited my passion for creating an outstanding donor experience. That for me sums up where we are. It's where I am. I hope it's where all you have ended up. And I hope you can go into the weekend with just a renewed sense of energy and enthusiasm for smashing those experiences out of the park. And so I have just one more thing to do, which is a huge thank you to Joe and Heidi from Animals Asia. Thank you to Giannina from Dementia UK. Thank you to Jenna from Breast Cancer Now, and Emma from British Red Cross. Thank you to Roger and Anton, Kay and Tash for contributing to an amazing loyalty day, our biggest one ever. So we had nearly 1,000 people registered for this event today from all around the world. We're just so excited, so energized, and a big thank you to everybody. I hope to see you all next year, third Thursday in November, and thanks all for coming along. Real pleasure.